Chapter 396. Ah, the future lord is so awesome. Does she still need a salted fish strategist? As a normal person, in Jiang Pingji's words, Feng Jin felt that he had suffered tens of thousands of points of damage. The nerves in the corners of his mouth seemed to be out of control. If it wasn't for his good upbringing, he might have already lost his composure. So you see, according to my initial conjecture, Xiangyang district is not without merit. It all depends on how it is used and developed. Jiang Pingji said, but these are ultimately my personal conjectures. I still have to personally go to Xiangyang district to know the actual situation. After listening, Feng Jin looked at the map and then at Jiang Pingji. He suddenly understood that no matter where she was thrown to, she would cause trouble. According to my experience, Xiangyang district should have an iron mine with medium reserves. If it is mined, swords, spears, and armor were essential equipment for elite troops. It was also the biggest expenditure. Jiang Pingji was very poor now. She could barely provide food for the troops. Providing 100 or 200 sets of elite weapons was a stretch, not to mention equipping the entire troop. But, even if there is an iron mine and it can be mined, how do we transport it out? Feng Jin was not a person who liked to bicker, but his companion was really asking for a beating that day. It made his hands itch. He couldn't help it. If she was that capable, why not just go to heaven? I heard some people say that if you want to be rich, you have to build roads first. Have fewer children and plant more trees. Bah, you don't have to care about the last sentence. Jiang Pingji blurted out the teasing of the audience in the streaming room. She said seriously, the main point is in the first sentence. The prosperity of any place is inseparable from roads that extend in all directions. The soil in Xiangyang district is not soft. If we build a road that leads to the outside world, it will save a lot of inconvenience. As for the money, food, and manpower needed to build the road, we don't have to worry too much. Forced labor? Feng Jin frowned. Since ancient times, the people hated forced labor, but the court's orders had to be carried out. Forced labor, in plain words, was unpaid manual labor. There was no reward for doing it well, but the whole family would die if it was not done well. If Jiang Pingji did it as soon as she took office, it would easily cause disgust and conflict among the local people. That's why I said that Huayu is too much of a gentleman. Some things need to be flexible. It's not good to stick to the rules. Jiang Pingji said, ordinary forced labor, the people are afraid to avoid it. Why do you ask? Wasn't it heavy labor without pay? Not only did it waste time, but it also delayed the family's farming. If we give the people a certain amount of rewards, take care of their food and clothing, and when the construction is completed in the future, each household will be able to reduce their agricultural taxes according to their discretion, or rent farming tools and cattle from the government at a low price, would anyone be unwilling? Where is the money? Feng Jin couldn't help but be vulgar and step on the crux of the problem. Jiang Pingji made a good point. However, they still needed to return to the essence of the matter, money. Where would the money come from? She exclaimed and shouted towards the outside, Is Xiaoyu around? Come here for a moment. Not long after, Su Ku, who was so busy that he felt dizzy, came in. The temperature and smell inside the tent were more comfortable than outside. What's the matter, Langjun? Jiang Pingji said, have the troops who were sent to search the ruins of the various residences returned? What's the result? Feng Jin immediately understood and his face turned green. Where would the money come from? He borrowed them directly from the ruins. She would write an IOU. When the day came when she had money, she would return it to the victim. However, this suggestion was made by himself, so Feng Jin could only bite the bullet and swallow it. Before the earthquake, many high-ranking officials and nobles were out of the city to avoid the heat, so most of the casualties were manservants. When the earthquake happened, the government intended to move the capital. Some families urgently sent manservants back with jewelry, luggage, and family property. Time was tight, so there were not many things that could be taken away. The rest almost benefited Jiang Pingji. Hearing her mention this, Su Ku's face became ruddy. He took out a list from his sleeve, on which there was a list of treasures. Those high-ranking officials didn't have time for such things, but Jiang Pingji's troops had time. They took away everything that could be taken away. When they came, every troop came empty-handed. When they left, every troop had bags full. Jiang Pengji said, "Look, don't we have the money now?" Feng Jin was speechless. He just wanted some peace and quiet. She didn't want to talk to him. Jiang Pengji didn't tease the poor Feng Jin anymore. She knew when to stop. "Let's first count how many people are willing to follow us. Time waits for no one." Jiang Pengji had just finished speaking when she suddenly thought of something. "Right, get someone to dress up as an ordinary person and spread the news about the Tsing-Yi army and the Red Lotus group." The audience in the streaming room didn't understand why Jiang Pengji did this, but Feng Jin and Su Ku understood instantly. Most of the people nowadays had some feelings of reluctance to leave their homeland. Even if they had lost their homes and the court didn't care about them, many people were still willing to blindly stay where they were instead of following an unfamiliar force to a stranger place to start anew. Jiang Pengji wasn't sure how many of the more than 10,000 people would be willing to follow her, so she simply used a little trick. If they followed her, they wouldn't have meat to eat every meal, but at least they could have warm porridge for 3 meals. Their lives wouldn't be in danger. If they stayed where they were or sought refuge with other relatives, just the mobs on the road would make them die without a complete corpse. Although the reaction arc was a little slow, the audience in the streaming room was still very quick-witted. Many people praised Jiang Pengji's shamelessness. Chow Lauer's wife, "I don't even help my second brother when I go to the toilet. I'll give it to you." De sells straw shoes. "Seeing that the streamer is so shameless, I'm suddenly relieved." Thinking about the romance of the 3 kingdoms, when Uncle Lu was defeated, he couldn't bear to leave the 100,000 people in Xianxia. It was said that the people voluntarily dragged their families to follow him. After watching the streamer, I suddenly started to have conspiracy theories. Ergu Wu de Dao, I've never seen such a shameless person. She's so shameless that she's righteous, but I just like her. Jiang Pengji looked at the bullet screen and secretly rolled her eyes. Didn't they know that she was in need of manpower and money now? If she didn't think of ways to increase income and reduce expenditure, how could she spread such a big business? In fact, the people had a very good impression of Jiang Pengji. Many even respected her from the bottom of their hearts. How many people had been personally rescued from the ruins by her? They were able to live, not because the court was kind and loved the people like their own children, but because of the youth's benevolent heart. The grace of saving their lives was like giving them a new lease on life. When the news that Jiang Pengji was preparing to depart for Xiangyang district spread, and they heard that there were mobs on the road, such as the Tsing-Yi army and the Red Lotus group. They were not decent organizations. Many people were anxious and miserable, afraid that she would leave them behind. Staying in Shangjing meant death. Why not think of a way to fight and start afresh in a new place? At least their days would not be as difficult as they were now. Most of the young people were willing to follow, but it was difficult for the elderly and children. They could not walk fast and would instead be a burden. Don't worry, old people. Those who want to leave can leave. Lang Jun won't leave any people behind. Chapter 397. In less than 2 hours, the news that Jiang Pengji was about to bring people to Xiangyang district spread throughout the camp. Considering that some of the people were seriously injured and could not travel normally, Jiang Pengji deliberately delayed it for a few days. She waited for their injuries to recover before they set off, so that the people could recuperate in peace. The troops and imperial guards who were free were transferred elsewhere to continue to shine. Such a considerate act made many people weep, and it also won Jiang Pengji a good reputation. Some of the people who had wavered even made up their minds and were willing to leave Shangjing with Jiang Pengji. "Luiwe? Why are you looking for me?" Jiang Pengji was sitting in the tent. She used her right hand to pull off the white dead skin hanging from the sole of her left foot. Her hands and feet were seriously injured when she rescued the people. Fortunately, she had a strong recovery ability, and the soles of her feet were white again. However, her injuries were healed, but the newly grown skin rubbed against the dead skin, making her feel very itchy. Anyway, she was bored and there was no one else in the tent. She might as well pick at the dead skin while chatting with the audience in the streaming room. Well, the audience said that today's streaming had a special flavor. A second ago, the audience in the streaming room was teasing her for not having a good image. They did not expect that someone would really come in the next second. According to Jiang Pingji's 5 senses, she naturally knew that Luo Yue was coming. She did not look embarrassed when she was caught. She looked natural and pointed to the mat not far away. She put down her left foot and gestured for Luo Yue to take a seat. "Coach Luo Yue, if you have something to say, don't hesitate." Luo Yue was also a rough man. Living in the Imperial Guard's camp, he had seen all kinds of scenes. Jiang Pingji was only quietly picking at the dead skin on the soles of her feet. She was considered polite. He had even seen the chief coach of the Imperial Guards pick at his feet and rub the mud off his skin, so he was very calm. "I heard that Lu Langjun is preparing to take up the post in Xiangyang district?" Luo Yue asked directly. Jiang Pingji frowned. She knew the reason for Luo Yue's visit. 1,000 Imperial Guards were also a military force. No matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. Not to mention that the 1,000 Imperial Guards were all young and strong men who were carefully selected. Jiang Pingji had no intention of letting them go. Even if Luo Yue wanted to leave, she would not agree. She sighed and replied, "It's true. Shangjing is in a mess now. It won't be easy to rebuild it. I heard that the Tsing-Yi army and the Red Lotus group are going to harm the people. If these people were left alone, it would be difficult for them to survive. However, the earthquake involved many people. Not only did Shangjing suffer, but even Fengyi County and Chengde County were severely affected. There were also mobs on the road." Luo Yue looked straight at Jiang Pingji and listened to her quietly. As a young instructor of the Imperial Army, Luo Yue had the right to be arrogant. However, he was also a reasonable person who respected those worthy of respect. Undoubtedly, no one could find any fault with Jiang Pingji's actions these days. Lu Langjun is worried about the people and intends to protect them to Xiangyang district of Fengyi County? If we don't do this and leave them be, their life and death will be up to the heavens. Jiang Pingji asked naturally. "I admire Sir Lu's benevolence. However, there's something that I don't know if I should say." Jiang Pingji said, "Coach Luo, please speak your mind. There are only 1,000 troops under Sir Lu's command. The rest of the troops are in Fengyi County for disaster relief. How can such a small number of people protect tens of thousands of people?" Luo Yue asked worriedly, "Why don't you ask the emperor and let the emperor decide?" Jiang Pingji smiled and said sarcastically, "Coach Luo, do you really not know, or are you pretending not to know? Let's not talk about anything else. Even the 1,000 Imperial Guards that Instructor Luo brought with him, I had to be thick-skinned to ask for them. Otherwise, you would be preparing to protect the emperor and move the capital to Qinzhou." Her words were rather rude. Luo Yue's expression changed slightly. Without waiting for him to speak, Jiang Pingji said, "Coach Luo, there's something you're wrong about. It's not 1,000 troops. Isn't there 1,000 Imperial soldiers that you brought? Instructor Luo, have you forgotten why the government allocated 1,000 Imperial Guards?" Luo Yue's expression was awkward. "But the earthquake has yet to end. The people have yet to truly settle down. There's even a plague spreading in Fengyi County. The people are destitute and homeless. The rebels are running amok and looting. All these things happened because of the earthquake. Do you think that the earthquake is over?" After a long time, Luo Yue cupped his hands in front of his chest in shame. He said that he still had something to do and left the tent. Jiang Pingji curled her lips. She was in a good mood. Luo Yue had boarded her pirate ship. He could forget about bringing anyone else down. After a while, the tent door was opened again. Someone came in. The person held a feather fan in his hand. He had wide sleeves and a silk scarf. When he walked, he had an elegant demeanor and displayed the charm of a scholar. As soon as he came in, he said, "According to Lanting, Coach Luo can't go back." "Go back for what? There's still a shortage of people here." Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes in annoyance. Qiguan Rang sighed. "Lanting is the only one who can say such a bandit's words so confidently and confidently." Jiang Pingji glanced at him and said, "Why are you here? Are you here to ridicule me?" "Of course not," Qiguan Rang said. "I have nothing to do." I borrowed a few books from you to read to pass the time. Having a godly teammate was a relief. Qiguan Rang was not someone who liked to stand out. He usually kept a low profile when he did things. Most of the work was delegated to Su Ku and Feng Jin. Damn it. He had half a day of leisure in his life. He would slack off if he could. Jiang Pengji glanced at him and suddenly said, I remember that you got a daughter last year. Qiguan Rang's wife was Wei Yuan's illegitimate daughter, Qiguan Weisher. She was young. They were a standard uncle and lowly match. After Qiguan Weisher married him, she only got pregnant after 2 years. She gave birth to her first child after much difficulty. She was a daughter like Feng Jin. Although she was a daughter, Qiguan Rang liked her very much. He mentioned it several times when he was communicating with Jiang Pengji. Qiguan Rang frowned in his heart. He did not understand why Jiang Pengji suddenly mentioned this. He answered, yes. Jiang Pengji suddenly revealed a malicious smile and said, Here, I'll show you something good. Study it when you go back. Qiguan Rang's heart skipped a beat. He saw Jiang Pengji take out 4 books from nowhere. This is a daughter's elementary reading material. It's enough for you to pass the time. He took a look. The first book was The Analects of Women. Qiguan Rang was strangely silent. Jiang Pengji added, Remember to show it to Huayu after you finish reading it. He kept the books in his sleeves, but his eyes were still a little conflicted. A man can't just be a father-in-law in this life. He can also be a father-in-law. Jiang Pengji smiled and showed her teeth. She did not have the demeanor of a young master from an aristocratic family. Just like you and Huayu. You have a daughter and you will have half a son in the future. Read more so that you can be mentally prepared in the future. Qiguan Rang knew that Jiang Pengji did not have good intentions, but he still read it when he went back. He felt that he was tricked and almost tore the 4 books apart. He turned his head and lent the 4 books to Feng Jin to read. He said that he could read it to the children. Feng Jin saw that it was the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women. He suddenly remembered the conversation he had with his wife. Thank you, Wenjing. I was thinking of finding 2 books for Changxing to read. Qiguan Rang looked at him as if he was looking at a fool and left silently. Feng Jin was puzzled. He packed up and returned to the carriage. Chapter 398. Zhao Village was a small mountain village at the border of Hejian County. The village was very small. A shout at the entrance of the village could be heard clearly at the end of the village. There were only 25 families in the village. If something big happened to any family, the news would spread throughout the village within an hour. In the past 6 months, the liveliest thing in the village was that Widow Zhao had picked up a wolf girl who didn't speak the human language. According to the analysis of the villagers, the wolf girl had been taken away by a female wolf who had lost her child when she was young and raised as her own child. Therefore, the wolf girl was very aggressive. She scratched whoever she caught. She didn't understand the human language, let alone speak it. At first, the villagers were very worried that the wolf girl would bring disaster to the village. However, half a year had passed and nothing had happened. Not only was everything fine, but the wolf girl's hunting skills were top-notch. She could go deep into the mountains to hunt every few days. The hunters in the village only dared to wander around the periphery. The wolf girl dared to go deep into the mountains and hunt every time. Widow Zhao had lost her husband at a young age. It was difficult for a woman to live alone. Ever since she picked up the wolf girl, she ate meat for every meal. She could even use wild eggs to put on her face. The wolf girl was a taciturn person. She ignored everyone and didn't talk to anyone. She looked at people as if they were dead. The villagers were afraid of her. Widow Zhao, on the other hand, knew how to conduct herself. When the wolf girl returned from hunting, she would always give some good things to the families. Today, the wolf girl hunted 2 big wild boars and came back. She didn't blush or pant along the way. She walked as if she was flying. Without looking sideways, the wolf girl carried the 2 big wild boars into Widow Zhao's courtyard and closed the fence. Yao, you're back. Wash your hands and face quickly. Come and try on your new clothes. When Widow Zhao heard the commotion outside, she knew who had returned. My name is not Yao. The wolf girl crossed her arms and leaned against the door. She frowned and looked unhappy. She didn't like the way Widow Zhao addressed her. Compared to Widow Zhao's fluent pronunciation, the wolf girl's pronunciation was very strange. It was like a child learning to speak. The wolf girl, or Jiang Pingji, had been in this strange, barbaric, and backward world for a whole year. For the first half of the year, she basically lived in the mountains. She knew that she had come to a completely strange barbaric era. What was worse was that she couldn't speak the language of these backward humans. She was unable to communicate verbally, which meant that she couldn't quickly integrate into this society, let alone get the information she needed. Knowing Widow Zhao and being picked up by her was a complete accident. Jiang Pengji inexplicably became the so-called wolf girl. While she was envied and feared by the villagers, she was also envied. Towards the filthy thoughts of these ancient humans, she only sneered coldly, feeling extremely disgusted with conversing with them. Widow Zhao, on the other hand, mediated between the two so that she could continue living in the village. Widow Zhao was an enthusiastic person. She pulled her to make a comparison of the new clothes. I see that you've been hunting in the mountains all day. You should at least change into a set of clean and light clothes. Don't be shy. Let me have a look. Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes. She took the green robes and went to her room. What about the pigs in the yard? I'll go kill them later. If the villagers want to buy it, sell it at a cheaper price. If you can't sell it, make it into dried meat. Jiang Pingji's voice was low and hoarse. It didn't sound like a girl's voice, but she was a real girl. Widow Zhao thought that such peaceful days would continue. If she saved for another 2 years, she would be able to gather a dowry for her youngest child and find a matchmaker to arrange a good marriage for her youngest child. Who knew that something unexpected would happen? That day, Jiang Pingji went hunting in the mountains as usual. She had a bountiful harvest. Just as she walked out of the forest, she saw an old man with a walking stick waiting outside. It was the village's Li Zheng. She had always been gentle towards the elderly and young children. Li Zheng, are you looking for me? Looking at his posture, something big must have happened. Jiang Pingji frowned. She had an ominous premonition. When Li Zheng saw her come out, he evaded her gaze. Youngest child, something happened to Widow Zhao. Quickly go back and take a look. Jiang Pingji understood what he meant. She hurriedly put down the wild game in her hands and returned to Widow Zhao's house as fast as she could. The fisherman who fished out the body said that Widow Zhao had fallen into the water and drowned. However, when Jiang Pingji looked at her body, she discovered that she had been strangled to death and thrown into the water. She had even been ravaged by at least 3 men before her death. Who was she trying to fool with such obvious marks? Jiang Pingji's expression was so grave that it could drip water. However, the people around her said that she was an untamed wolf. Widow Zhao had treated her so well. Now that she was dead, she didn't even cry. She was simply an ingrate. Jiang Pingji understood what he meant, but she found it ridiculous. Wasn't the best way to answer to the wrongly dead to prove her innocence? Cry? What was the use of crying? Using the excuse of keeping watch at night, Jiang Pingji carefully examined Widow Zhao's body and found a few key clues. She had endured it for a few days. After Widow Zhao's burial, she left Zhao village that night. After half a month of careful investigation, she locked onto 4 suspects. Given that the 4 of them had high social statuses and had attendance wherever they went, Jiang Pingji chose to assassinate them. When she killed the 4th person, there was a small problem. Lu Lanting, you be *starred. You actually killed your illegitimate brother with your own hands? Lu, she pointed at Jiang Pingji with a trembling finger. He was half sober. His eye bags were dark and his footsteps were weak. It was obvious that he had been drained by alcohol and women. Jiang Pingji didn't like to kill innocent people. She came and went without a trace, so she wasn't afraid that she would see her face. What Lu Lanting? She asked in a hoarse voice with a cold face. What illegitimate brother? She looked at her in disbelief. Then he looked at the lifeless body on the ground. While he was devastated, he was also furious. Be *starred, if I don't kill you today, I won't be able to avenge my son. When Lu Shi was young, he was a famous playboy in Hejin. He was addicted to alcohol and women all day long. He had many wives and concubines in his backyard. He kidnapped countless women and killed even more. Perhaps it was retribution. After they got married, they only had 2 sons of concubines and a daughter of the first wife. One son of the concubine died young, and the other son of the second wife, who survived with great difficulty, became a golden lump. He and his concubines spoiled him to the point of lawlessness, and often did evil things to the common women. Both father and son were not good people, and they had many deaths of human lives. As for the illegitimate daughter, she fell into the bandits' lair a year ago. It was said that she was no longer innocent. He felt ashamed, so he simply declared that she was dead and didn't send anyone to look for her. Unexpectedly, she came back a year later and took her illegitimate brother's life. Jiang Pingji frowned. She had a good memory. On the first day she came to this world, she saved a group of girls who were being bullied by bandits. When those girls called her, they did pronounce her name, Lanting. Could it be the name of the original owner of this body? I don't know who Lanting is. I only know that the B** starred lying on the ground and the other 3 B** stards killed the most important person to me in this world. He committed a crime. According to the federal law, rape and murder are capital crimes. Jiang Pingji jumped onto the eaves and used her right hand to grab a stone from the cloth bag around her waist. She hit Lu Shi and knocked him out. After that, she re-entered the forest and lived a carefree life like a savage. If there were no accidents, it would have been a good life. Unfortunately, her neighbors were the bandits who came looking for trouble. Jiang Pingji single-handedly challenged the entire bandit village. Although she didn't kill anyone, every bandit was injured. The lightest injury was a fracture. After witnessing Jiang Pingji's ruthlessness, all the bandits were afraid of her. Who owns this mountain? It's yours, my queen. Who has the final say on this mountain? My queen, you have the final say. Very well. From now on, this is my territory. Who should you listen to? Will listen to you, my queen. Chapter 399. Hey, Daddy's Chongqing, come and let Daddy hug you. He quietly waited for Wei Jingxian to feed the child and burp. Only then did he reach out to take Chongqing. His face was full of love. Alas, I haven't seen you for half a day and you look better. Feng Jin didn't even need to write a draft when he praised his daughter. Chongqing also particularly liked the refreshing smell on his body. She subconsciously got close to him. With her big bright eyes, the father and daughter looked at each other. Chongqing would occasionally make a strange gurgling sound. She grinned, revealing her bright red gums. Seeing the father and daughter talking in the same language, Wei Jingxian pursed her lips and chuckled. Her eyes were full of happiness. After playing for a while, Chongqing began to feel sleepy. Feng Jin put her back on the bed and took out a book from his sleeve. It was said that if a child listened to more introductory books, they would be more intelligent and would speak earlier than their peers. Based on the principles of "my daughter will not be bad" and "I love to study, my daughter will love to study too," Feng Jin naturally didn't want his child to lose at the starting point. If she listened more now, maybe when she was old enough to speak and learn, she would be able to speak well. Because the baby was sleeping on a cot, Wei Jingxian didn't see what book Feng Jin took out. She let the maidservant wipe her body and felt much better. Only then did she lie back down, feeling sleepy. During her confinement, she only ate and slept every day. She felt that her bones were stiff. She wanted to fall asleep with her Longjuan's gentle and clear voice, but she didn't know what he was reading. Every woman must first learn to be upright. The only way to be upright is to be chaste. Purity makes the body clean, chastity makes the body glorious. Men and women are different inside and outside. Don't peep at the outer wall, don't go out of the outer courtyard. Don't tell your name to a man who is not your family. Don't date a woman who is not virtuous. Only by being upright can one be a man. After reading this paragraph, Feng Jin couldn't help but turn to the page again, feeling a little strange. But the words, "Women's Analects," were clearly written on it. Could this book be fake? Wei Jingxian also felt that something was wrong. She slowly got up and saw Feng Jin turning 2 pages and reading. When a woman marries, her husband is her husband. To compare her husband to the heavens is a sign of righteousness. If your husband is angry, don't be angry. She retreated and gave way to him, swallowing her anger and whispering, "A maiden should never leave her room. He could come and go as he pleased. If you don't obey, I will scold you." Feng Jin was stunned. He immediately closed the book and picked up the women's commandments and flipped through it. A husband has the right to remarry, and a wife has no second wife. That's why it's said that the husband is heaven. One cannot escape from the heavens, and one cannot leave the man. Those who go against the gods will be punished by the heavens. Those who are immoral and righteous will be merciless. The more Feng Jin read, the stiffer his expression became. At this moment, Wei Jingxian had already gotten up. She hugged her daughter, who was sleeping on the bed, and covered her ears. She said sarcastically, "It turns out that my husband likes such obedient girls who are like wooden puppets." The wronged Feng Jin. Without waiting for him to speak, Wei Jingxian continued, "If my husband likes her, you can look for her. But Changxing was born after 10 months of pregnancy. I can't wait to spoil her. How can I bear to see her become like this and be abused by other men? I'm tired. My husband, please help yourself." Feng Jin, who was still in a daze. He sat in a daze and flipped through the other 2 books in disbelief. The contents were almost the same. Almost all of them asked women to be humble and weak, to be docile and docile, to not step out of the house, and to wish they could remove their brains. It was best if they could not think. How was this raising a daughter? It was clearly raising a female slave. Which proper noble daughter would be so submissive and lowly? Feng Jin felt that he had been deceived. As a gifted scholar, he should also have a talented daughter. That would be in line with his character. What happened to the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women? What happened to the primer for women? He had read the pirated version, hadn't he? Just as Jiang Pingji had said, a man would not only be a father-in-law in this life, but he could also be a father-in-law. According to the contents of the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women, which woman would not become a mindless blockhead in the end? A man did not mind marrying a mindless blockhead as his wife because he could choose from other concubines. However, he might not be able to accept his daughter becoming like that, marrying into her husband's family and being abused by others. For a newbie female con like Feng Jin, it was even more intolerable. He was so angry that he threw the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women out of the carriage. He couldn't wait to reason with Qiguan Rang. This person was so bad. Why did he give him such filthy things? He was deliberately causing trouble. Before that, he felt that it was necessary to clear his grievances. How could he be that kind of man? Jingxian, this is a misunderstanding. As your husband, I can't wait to love Changxing. How could I? Before Feng Jin could finish, Wei Jingxian said, "If my husband is really like this, why did you read such despicable books to Changxing?" Feng Jin, who felt very wronged, if he knew the contents were like this, not to mention reading it, he would definitely burn it to keep his daughter away from these poisonous things. This was given to your husband by Wenjing just now. In order to stabilize the grape trellis in the backyard, Feng Jin sold Qiguan Rang. A while ago, I was chatting with Jingxian. Didn't you mention the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women? I thought it was an excellent primer. That's why there was him. Speaking of which, he felt very wronged. Wei Jingxian was not really angry. She was just overreacting for a moment. At this moment, the sleepy Changxing opened her eyes slightly. She yawned and squeezed out 2 drops of tears. She looked at her innocently. My husband doesn't know. Nowadays, these 4 books have become a must-read for noble women in Zhongzhou. They are also regarded as the standard by everyone. Before marriage, the husband's family must present a copy to his future wife. Wei Jingxian sighed. She looked at Feng Jin with a complicated gaze. She suddenly mentioned someone. My husband, do you still remember the great scholar of Zhongzhou, Mr. Wan Changjai? Wan Changjai? Of course, Feng Jin remembered. He was very familiar with the great scholar of the present age. Mr. Wan Xianxia had a 15-year-old daughter. Last year, she went to the Buddhist temple to offer incense. She accidentally lost a handkerchief and it was picked up by a ruffian. When the news spread, everyone thought that the girl had an illicit affair with the ruffian. The girl's original engagement was ruined. She was also despised by her fiancé's family for being an unclean girl. The clan elder was deeply embarrassed. While Mr. Wan Xianxia was not at home, he forcefully took the girl away and drowned her. Drowned her? Feng Jin was stunned. When Mr. Wan Xianxia rushed back, his daughter had already drowned. Not only did everyone not think that it was illegal, but they also thought that it protected the girl's chastity. Because her reputation was tarnished, she had an affair with a ruffian. Only death could prove her innocence. These things were told to her by her close friends. The more she heard, the more anxious she felt. Also, Mr. Wan Xianxia had a sister. She did not get along with her husband's family in the early years, so they separated. To prevent the girl from remarrying and bringing shame to the family, the clan elder also drowned her. Mr. Wan Xianxia was well known in Zhongzhou, but he could not even protect his own daughter and sister. What Wei Jingxian said made Feng Jin feel like he was listening to a heavenly book. She simply added fuel to the fire. I heard that there was a noble widow in Zhongzhou. The Wang Lin widow refers to a woman whose husband died before she was married. In order to maintain her chastity, the woman still had to marry the man's memorial tablet. Hence, she was called the Wang Lin widow. The husband's parents felt that their son had passed away and were worried that their daughter-in-law would not be content with her marriage and would not be willing to maintain her chastity for their son. Not to mention having an affair with another man, they did not even allow the daughter-in-law to self-destruct. Hence, they forced the woman to cut off all 10 of her fingers to express her determination to maintain her chastity. All these were brought about by the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women. Chapter 400. How could there be such a ridiculous thing in this world? Feng Jin stared blankly for a long time. He had never cared about the trifles in the backyard, nor did he like gossip. Naturally, he had never heard of it. After he finished speaking, he heaved a long sigh of relief and said, "Fortunately, our Chongqing is not from Zhongzhou." What a broken picture! Wei Jingxian glanced at him and saw the desire in his eyes. Her heart softened and she let him carry Chongqing. "Husband, it's too early to rejoice." Wei Jingxian said worriedly, "This thing has slowly spread in Hejian County. Some husbands even use the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women to demand their wives to abide by their words and deeds. If they disobey, they will be considered unchaste. One is..." At this point, Wei Jingxian swallowed the rest of her words. She only looked worriedly at Chongqing in Feng Jin's arms. How she wished that she was a man. At least, the standards of men in this world were not so harsh. If that was the case, she would have less worries. As a woman, from birth to marriage to having children, there were too many restrictions and helplessness. Now, with the addition of the heavy shackles known as the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women, she could not imagine what Chongqing would do in the future. Although Wei Jingxian did not finish her sentence, Feng Jin could understand what she wanted to express. These books had actually spread in Dongqing? Dongqing inherited the open-mindedness of the previous dynasty, Xia. The higher the status of a woman, the more freedom she had. However, with the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women, the situation was reversed. Women from aristocratic families were not as comfortable as ordinary women. How could this be? Don't worry. Our Chongqing is naturally the pride of the heavens. No one can easily trample on her. Feng Jin's eyes darkened and happened to meet Chongqing's bright eyes. He could not help but tease her and said, "If it really doesn't work, we'll find a husband for her in the future. Let's see who dares to bully her." Wei Jingxian looked at the father and daughter and smiled bitterly. Even if it's a son-in-law, this is only treating the symptoms and not the root cause. Can parents keep an eye on their children's marriage for a lifetime? Raising a child for 100 years is like worrying for 99 years. I owe this girl from my previous life. I have to pay her back in this life. Feng Jin sighed. In any case, these harmful books cannot continue to spread. Otherwise, I don't know how many women from noble families will be trampled and persecuted. Women from aristocratic families are born noble. How can they be subservient to others? Ridiculous. Deep in his bones was the nobility of an aristocratic family. If the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women only harmed ordinary women, he would at most frown. He wouldn't feel that there was much harm. However, once it harmed the women of an aristocratic family and his female relatives, how could he sit still? But now, Wei Jingxian was extremely worried. Feng Jin teased Changxing for a while. She frowned impatiently and used her small fist to hit his fingers weakly, as if she was caressing him. Jingxian, have you forgotten about Lanting? He took a sip of his daughter's finger. It was soft and tender, with a milky fragrance on her body. It dispelled the tiredness in his heart. Lanting isn't an ordinary person. She won't hide her identity forever. If she succeeded, who would dare to look down on women? You don't have to worry for nothing. Take good care of Changxing and take good care of your body, lest you fall ill. The environment of giving birth and confinement was so simple, but she and her child were healthy. It could be seen that God also cared for them. Wei Jingxian had been depressed for a long time. She didn't show it usually, but she always revealed a worried expression in private. After hearing Feng Jin's words, Wei Jingxian was so shocked that she almost bit her tongue. Husband, you mean? Could it be? It's hard to say now, but with Lanting's personality, she can't calm down even for a day. Even if she has nothing to do, she will still stir up trouble. Compared to Wei Jingxian's worry, Feng Jin was very calm. He said, now that the chaos has started, the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women won't last long. The people have lost their homes, the young and strong died in a foreign land. If women are still forced to remain as widows in chastity, how can the people quickly recover? If the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women was published during peaceful times, it would indeed have a very good environment to grow. Feng Jin alone couldn't resist the entire trend. But now that chaos was everywhere, just this earthquake alone had buried the lives of countless young men, causing many women to lose their families. If the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women was done according to the content of the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women, if women didn't change, there would be only men left, and no new life would be born. In ancient times, it was the era of agriculture. Manpower was the main productive force. Without people, society could not develop. Feng Jin could see far ahead, so he wasn't worried. Unless Zhongzhou unified the 5 countries, the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women would not be completely popularized in the next 100 years. Thinking of this, Feng Jin searched for information related to Zhongzhou in his mind, and a mocking smile appeared at the corner of his lips. Jingxian, don't worry. Our Changxing will be good in the future. Zhongzhou had always been the most prosperous country among the 5 countries, but in recent years, the emperor had become more and more muddle-headed, the court was in turmoil, and relatives and eunuchs ran amok. A few years ago, there was even a party rebellion. The once prosperous Zhongzhou was actually following the old path of Dongqing. Looking at it that way, there was actually nothing to worry about. But yeah? Changxing started to mumble again, her soft little claws grabbing onto Feng Jin's wide sleeve. The father and daughter were playing quite happily. After cleverly and wittily resolving a family crisis and coaxing his daughter, Feng Jin got out of the car with a face full of smiles. As soon as the curtain of the carriage fell, the spring breeze-like smile disappeared in an instant. He bent down to pick up the book on the ground and aggressively looked for Qiguan Rang to settle the score. It was fine if he was lazy these days, but how could he use such a trick to trick him? Unbeknownst to Feng Jin, Qiguan Rang had already taken refuge at Jiang Pingji's place. Have you read those books? Lanting has caused you a lot of trouble. When Huaiyu comes later, you have to help her. Qiguan Rang savored the fragrance of the tea and put down the teacup. He said, as for those books, I think they're the work of some bored scholars. There's nothing worth reading. It hurt his eyes. Jiang Pingji said, those are the works of the Empress of Zhongzhou, written by a virtuous empress. How can people not pursue them? Qiguan Rang was speechless. Jiang Pingji said maliciously, I plan to buy a few more books. When someone gives birth to a daughter, I'll give them a set. Qiguan Rang deliberately misinterpreted Jiang Pingji's meaning. He said, Lanting wants people to learn how to raise their daughters? No, I want them to see if they follow the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women, how their daughters will be tortured after 10 years when they get married. The corner of Qiguan Rang's mouth twitched. He deeply understood how sinister Jiang Pingji was. Lang Jun, you don't seem to like those books, Qiguan Rang said. Jiang Pingji glanced sideways and said, Of course I don't like them. Do you like them? Qiguan Rang smiled and said honestly, If it's just from a man's point of view, I somewhat agree. After all, I'm just an ordinary man. But from the perspective of a father who has a daughter, those books are still too harmful. Chapter 401. As expected, Feng Jin still came to settle scores with Qiguan Rang. However, literati, especially smart literati, did not settle accounts by rolling up their sleeves and going back and forth. Jiang Pingji's eyes darted left and right. She saw Feng Jin and Qiguan Rang sitting on one side of the tent, engaged in a war of words. No one was willing to take a step back. The whole tent was filled with invisible smoke. She secretly rolled her eyes and said to the audience in the streaming room, Host V, are you willing to bet that these 2 men are feminists? Their quarrels can be so artistic. I've learned a lot. Clearly, she was the one who started the fight. Now that things have gotten out of hand, she's the one who took the blame. Such a shameless streamer is a breath of fresh air in the streaming world. Sugarless mints, feminists aren't scary. What's scary is that they have a brain. I thought they were having a pleasant conversation. After the by the expert in the streaming room, I found out that they were actually quarreling. The ancient scholars are really scary. Their quarrels can be so artistic. Shimi Dedeo, artistic is not scary. What's scary is that you don't understand and think they're praising you. That's embarrassing. Dedeo, don't you think the streamer is the worst one? She was the one who started the quarrel. Jiang Pingji rested her chin on her hand. Whether it was Qiguan Rang or Feng Jin, they wouldn't take the initiative to fight her. They couldn't beat them. After arguing for half a day, the 2 of them, who were evenly matched, decided to stop fighting. They brewed tea and enjoyed it. There was no sign of the previous fight. Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes. She didn't really understand the way scholars quarrel. The medical technology of the ancient times was very backward. There were too many patients, and the doctors could not handle all of them. Many of the more serious patients could not hold on at all and breathed their last unwillingly. Those with lighter injuries recovered very quickly, and it would not be a problem for them to continue their journey. After a few days, Jiang Pingji buried the dead people and ordered people to set off. Riding on white and wearing cool wooden clogs, Jiang Pingji cleared the way in front. A few slow carriages followed behind. The carriages contained food, herbs, and the more seriously injured people. The rest of the people rode horses if they could. If they couldn't, they walked. The people packed their bags and followed behind. Jiang Pingji specially arranged 2/3 of the troops and imperial guards to protect them. Meng Hun led the scouts ahead and reported the situation every 15 minutes. Feng Jin rode a maroon horse and went forward to ask Jiang Pingji, I heard from the troops in Fengyi County that people have succumbed to the plague. Do you want to consider changing the route and detour to Xiangyang district? The people behind us are not suitable to go to the epidemic area. If they get infected, there will be unnecessary deaths and injuries. Jiang Pingji understood that in ancient times, there was no specific medicine. These diseases were very scary. Once they spread, they could take away countless lives. She nodded and said, Let's change our route to Xiangyang district. Let's settle these people down first before going to other places in Fengyi County. Epidemics were bound to occur after major disasters, but that was because they had not done a good job in sanitation and epidemic prevention. Jiang Pingji acted in time and chose to bury the corpses. She sprinkled lime on the corpses to reduce the possibility of the corpses burying into the soil. The campsite was frequently cleaned, and the injured's belongings were disinfected with mugwort water. Coupled with God's grace, There were no epidemics in Shangjing. However, it was different in Fengyi County. According to the troops in charge of disaster relief, many corpses were strewn on the streets. Water from rotting corpses was everywhere. Wild cats and dogs gnawed on the corpses. In the end, not only was the river polluted, but even the people's daily water supply was not clean. Under such circumstances, it was difficult for epidemics to not break out in the scorching summer. Jiang Pingji could only order the troops to be careful. They had to pay attention to the food and water that passed through their mouths every day. The mugwort water and reed water had not been cut off. Only by protecting their own lives could they save more people. Su Ku frowned and added, "If we do that, Lang Jun must remember to write a letter to the other district magistrates. You must also inform the chief of Fengyi County. Otherwise, with thousands of troops by your side, it will definitely arouse their suspicion and panic." Jiang Pingji was now only the district magistrate of Xiangyang district. She was not the chief of Fengyi County. In theory, she could not run around outside of her own territory. Compared to these, Rang is more worried about the situation in Xiangyang district. Qiguan Rang joined the discussion out of boredom. He said with a solemn expression, "Xiangyang district is also affected by the earthquake. When the earthquake happened, there was no one in charge in Xiangyang district. It may have long been in a mess. We don't know what the situation over there is. If the plague spreads, Lanting will be busy for a long time." Fortunately, Xiangyang district was vast and sparsely populated. Even if there were heavy casualties among the people, it would not be able to cause a large-scale epidemic. Qiguan Rang thought calmly. His pure black eyes carried a chill that sent chills down one's spine. "I have already sent a small team to Xiangyang district to investigate the situation. There will be news in 2 days." Jiang Pingji naturally thought of these problems. Most of them were already prepared. To be honest, with such a worry-free future lord, Su Ku and the rest felt rather relaxed. A godlike lord was always better than a pig-like one. If she could change her bad temper, it would probably be even more perfect. When Jiang Pingji brought nearly 20,000 people to Xiangyang district, Wei Ci fell ill on the way. He had a high fever for 2 days and almost burned his brain. Cough, cough, cough. His exquisite and perfect face quickly thinned under the torture of illness. But a beauty was a beauty. Even if he was sick, he still had a beauty that made people lose their minds. Wei Ci got up with difficulty. He drank the bowl of black medicine and almost vomited it out of disgust. "Sai, I really don't know why you are in such a hurry." Zhang Ping helplessly helped him lie down. He asked the boy servant to bring some candied plums. "Since the earthquake that day, I feel that you have something buried in your heart. You have been traveling day and night without caring about your health. You have finally fallen ill, haven't you?" Wei Ci felt his whole body heat up. His high fever had yet to subside. Even his vision was blurry. "Shiheng, I am fine," Zhang Ping tooted. "You are fine? If your fever doesn't subside, your brain will be cooked and served on the table." If he had not gone on this journey with Wei Ci, who knew if this person would have fallen sick halfway through the journey and died in some desolate wilderness. He had never seen someone who did not take care of his body. Wei Ci's body was not strong to begin with. Now that he was acting so recklessly, he was courting death. He still had a high fever. The breath he exhaled was boiling hot. Wei Ci did not even dare to sleep. Once he fell asleep, he would have all kinds of nightmares. It made him unusually tired. Not only did his condition not improve, it worsened. With his current condition, Zhang Ping would not allow Wei Ci to continue traveling. The two of them and the servant simply stayed in the guest house. The next day, Zhang Ping heard a monk begging for alms outside. He seemed to want to stay for the night. The owner of the house declined politely. There were no more spare rooms. "May I ask if there is a young man with the surname Wei in your house?" Zhang Ping was about to boil the medicine when he heard the old monk outside asking the farmer with a smile. He immediately tensed up. An old monk. Chapter 402. Zhang Ping, who was just about to lift his foot, stopped. He stretched his ears to listen to the old monk's intentions. The owner thought for a while and said, "There is such a Lang Jun. Do you know him?" The old monk twirled his Buddhist beads and said, "I am fated to meet him. I wonder if you could pass on a message?" Before the owner could decide whether to agree or reject, Zhang Ping walked out. "Is the person you were looking for Zixiao?" Zhang Ping knew that Wei Si had many friends, but the monk in front of him was a little strange. How did he know that Wei Si was staying here? How is Wei Si doing? Zhang Ping believed most of it. He turned to the side and invited the old monk and the novice monk into the house. It was midsummer and the sun was blazing. Zixiao's fever hasn't subsided for the past 2 days. He's so sick that he's about to faint. We've used all kinds of medicine, but it doesn't seem to work. Zhang Ping frowned and said, "Maybe there aren't any good doctors in this small place. Anyway, his illness makes me worried." The old monk smiled and took off his bamboo hat. He passed the hat and the wooden staff to the novice monk beside him. "You're wrong. Wei Si hasn't recovered yet. I'm afraid he's missing a catalyst." The owner warmly filled a bowl of cold and clean well water. The old monk bowed and took it with a smile, thanking him in a low voice. Zhang Ping was shocked. Catalyst? The doctor didn't say that the prescription is missing any catalyst. The old monk drank 2 mouthfuls and passed the bowl to the thirsty novice monk. The child took it and gulped it down. "This is a catalyst to treat mental illness." The old monk looked benevolent. He lowered his head and asked the novice monk, "Have you had enough?" The novice monk nodded shyly and passed the bowl back to the owner politely. Zhang Ping was even more confused. Mental illness? The old monk said, "Wei Si is still suffering from a serious illness. It's not because of his body. I'm afraid it's because of his heart." The more Zhang Ping listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. He could not help but slow down his pace as he led the way. He had been staying here with the sick Wei Si for 3 days and had never seen this old monk. The moment the other party came, he started talking endlessly as if he knew everything. It was simply not normal. But on second thought, Wei Si was an evildoer. How could the friend he befriended be normal? "Grandmaster, please wait a moment. I'll go and wake Zixiao up." Walking to the door, Zhang Ping nodded at the old monk, then pushed the door open. Wei Si's face was flushed from the fever, his lips were chapped, even with his eyes closed it was difficult to hide the haggardness and sickness in his eyes. "Zixiao? Wake up." What's wrong?" Wei Si opened his eyes in a daze. His eyelids seemed to be filled with lead water and it was very difficult to open them. "A grandmaster who claims to be your friend has come to see you." When Zhang Ping said this, he felt a little strange. Although Wei Si was very sick, he could tell that something was wrong. Just as he was about to speak, a shadow slowly elongated and approached. An amiable-looking old monk came uninvited and bowed to him. When Zhang Ping saw the shadow, he was so shocked that he turned around abruptly. He leaned to the side and took down the weapon on the rack, staring fiercely at the old monk. The old monk did not seem to realize that he had startled Wei Si. He sat straight down and said to Wei Si, "My Buddhist name is Liaochen. My Buddhist name is Liaochen, from Hejian County." Hearing Hejian County, Wei Si's eyes brightened, indicating to Zhang Ping that he did not need to be so paranoid. "Grandmaster, please forgive me. I'm very sick now and am unable to get up to return the greeting." Wei Si secretly bit the tip of his tongue to make himself more clear-headed. He said in a hoarse voice, "Just now Shiheng said that you know me, but I'm not muddle-headed from my illness. I don't remember when I met you." Monk Liaochen smiled with his eyes closed. He carefully scanned Wei Si's face and understood. "Young friend, I've indeed never met you, but I do know someone who should be familiar with you." Wei Si's heart skipped a beat. A person's name appeared in his mind, making him feel defeated. Even now, he still could not let go of that person. He was possessed. Who is the Grandmaster referring to? Lu Shi from Hejian County, the son of Lu Prefecture's governor. Judging from her appearance, she and you should have some fate in the mortal world. Wei Si's already red face instantly turned 2 degrees hotter. He even looked a little embarrassed. "Si and that Lang Jun are both men." Cough. When did the Grandmaster take over the Moon Lord's responsibility? Although Zhang Ping put down his weapon, he was still wary of the old monk's actions. However, listening to the conversation between the two, he felt that he seemed to have heard some big news. Wei Ci and Lu Shi are both men. Zixiao actually has the hobby of splitting peaches? Liaochen did not answer but asked, "Young friend, are you going north to find Lu Langjun?" Wei Ci responded with silence. Liaochen continued, "Almsgiver, do you know that the difficulty of recovering from this serious illness is not because of the ineffective medicine, but because of the knot in your heart? What exactly is the Grandmaster trying to say? Just tell me." Wei Ci was slowly losing his patience. Because of the foreboding dream, Lu Shi had become a knot that he was unwilling to touch. If he had been more determined to not let her go to Shangjing, perhaps she would not have encountered the earthquake that should not have existed. Dongqing was located in the north. There were only 3 recorded earthquakes in 1,000 years. His brain was not damaged, so naturally he remembered it clearly. In his previous life, there were no earthquakes in Dongqing. But now it happened. This made him wonder if this earthquake was a warning from the heavens that a demon was born in the world? In this world, other than him who came back from the dead, who else could be considered an ominous demon? Lu Langjun is fine, she is very lucky. But young friend, if this continues, I am afraid that you will not live long. Liaochen said frankly, the lord of the fated true dragon, blessed with luck, even demons and monsters will not be able to get close to him. When Wei Ci heard this, he broke out in a cold sweat. If not for his weak body, he would have sat up in shock. Grandmaster, your words. Wei Ci looked at Liaochen with a cold and frightening murderous intent. His face was still the same, but the aura around him was no longer gentle. Instead, it was threatening and sinister. Liaochen said, "She is still alive. I did not come here to look for you, I just wanted to let you know. Young people are really more impetuous with each generation. Back then, Lu Zhongqing could still listen to me quietly." When he finished, he looked at Wei Ci with a look that said, "You are letting down the old man." Wei Ci responded with silence. "Fine, he'll shut up, all right? You can go on." A while ago, the earthquake suddenly happened. According to my prediction, I am afraid it was not a natural disaster, but a man-made disaster. Chapter 403. Monk Liaochen did not mind Zhang Ping's doubts and continued, "I am an otherworldly person and should not interfere with the affairs of the mortal world. However, the demon caused chaos and stole the country's fate, causing the natural disasters to multiply and even the earthquake this time. The people of the world died because of the demon's greed. The demon not only stole the fate of a country but also the vitality of the people. My friend, you have learned some Xianshu, you should understand." Wei Ci was scared by Liaochen a few times and now his mind was much clearer. "Who is that demon?" Liaochen shook his head and said, "I don't know. This demon is extremely cunning and we still don't know what he looks like." Wei Ci was shocked and said, "This demon actually dared to do this." He had learned Xianshu and naturally knew some unorthodox methods. Stealing and transferring fate were all evil techniques and almost no one had a good ending. Stealing a little could lead to the death of an entire family, but Wei Ci closed his eyes and carefully recalled the successive disasters in Dongqing over the years. Compared to the situation in his previous life, it was at least 30% more. In addition to the huge earthquake this time, he did not dare to imagine how much of Dongqing's fate was stolen and how much of the vitality of the people was stolen. It was unbelievable that he could still be alive after stealing so much. It was true that Dongqing's fate was nearing its end, but it could still survive for 7 to 8 years. However, looking at the current situation, it might not even last 2 to 3 years. The ability to check the fate of a country could only be done by a mighty person. The old monk in front of him was probably a real Daoist master. In fact, I had already noticed it 10 years ago. At that time, Dongqing's fate was weakening rapidly and the fate was getting thinner and thinner. When a country was about to die, it would either die today or tomorrow. Liaochen did not care about this at all. People outside of the secular world did not like to interfere with worldly affairs and would get involved in karma and sin for no reason. However, this demon who stole the fate had evil intentions. When Liaochen made up his mind to catch it, he realized that the demon's whereabouts were strange and he could not find any trace of it. The demon stole around Dongqing and left a mess behind. Instead, the innocent people had to bear the consequences. Even with your level of cultivation, you can't catch that demon? Wei Ci frowned and was worried. There's nothing we can do. Monk Liaochen shook his head helplessly, but it was this earthquake that allowed me to discover some clues. The next Ziwei Emperor Star's fate was also stolen a little, but the Emperor Star's actions were in accordance with the will of the heavens, so it should have grown. Wei Ci's face suddenly turned pale. He understood who the Ziwei Imperial Star that Wei Chen was talking about was. According to his words, could it be that the demon had his eyes on her? Although the Emperor's aura of Ziwei was a mysterious thing, Wei Ci knew that it would be fatal to lack it at certain times. Take a chestnut, for example, having the geographical and human advantages, but lacking the crucial timing. What kind of feeling was that? Sometimes, luck was also a part of strength. Wei Ci knew that the person was capable, had a good temperament and means, but if he was defeated because his luck was weaker than his opponents, then it would be too unjust. Master, do you mean that demon is currently lurking around Lanting? Yes, I realized this, so I hurried to the north to warn Lu Langjun to be careful. Liaochen smiled bitterly. That Langjun is full of malice. Not to mention the demon, even if a ghost came, I'm afraid it would turn around and run. Monk Liaochen realized that Jiang Pingji's emperor's aura had mysteriously decreased, then after a period of time, it steadily increased again. He spent a lot of effort to calculate and realized that this person's fate was many times more malice than the previous dynasty's Prime Minister Huangfu's fate. If that demon really had his eyes on her, it would not end well. Speaking of which, the fate of this young man in front of him seemed to be no different from that of Prime Minister Huangfu. It was no wonder that this person and Lu Langjun were fated in the mortal world. Using malice against malice, they were a pair. Harming each other, saving the world. Amitba. Good. Monk Liaochen chanted the name of Buddha in his heart. On the surface, he showed a compassionate look, as if there was a Buddha's aura behind him. So, I prepared to go back. Since he was fine, why would he go to the earthquake-stricken area? Wei Ci was speechless. When I passed by this place, I found a dying phoenix. I knew it was you, so I came to pay a visit. After Monk Liaochen finished, he looked at Wei Ci silently. If this person died, the Zhenlong would only be left with a lonely life. Even if he could found a country, there would be no inheritance. It was equivalent to ending a dynasty. Enlightening this person's heart was equivalent to saving his life. It indirectly linked the fate of a country, but it was not related to karma. Feeling good. For a superior person like Monk Liaochen, nothing was more attractive than merit. Wei Ci was an introverted person. After being lectured by Monk Liaochen, his cheeks turned bright red. It was not because he had a fever, but because he was embarrassed. At this moment, he was really glad that he was seriously ill. Otherwise, he would not have the face to see anyone. Liaochen said, "The Ziwei Imperial Star is fine. You should focus on recuperating. Don't think too much." "Thank you, Master." As if a huge rock had been removed, Wei Ci felt his entire body become lighter. Seeing that he was still tired, Monk Liaochen gestured to leave. Zhang Ping stood up to send him off. Along the way, his expression was extremely conflicted. Monk Liaochen thanked the farmer for the 2 pancakes and a full water pouch. He took the bamboo hat and wooden staff from the young novice monk. "Farewell, almsgiver." Monk Liaochen was about to leave. "Wait, master." Zhang Ping stopped him and asked hesitantly, "Zi Xiao, he has the fate of a phoenix? Since ancient times, when was there a man who was empress?" Master Liaochen said, "The phoenix is a male bird." So, there was nothing wrong with the fate of a phoenix. Zhang Ping's expression became more conflicted, but he did not pursue the matter. Instead, he went back to take care of the patient with a heart full of worries. After Zhang Ping walked far away, the young novice monk raised his head and asked, "Abbot, why did that almsgiver look so pale?" Liaochen said seriously, "It's because he is not used to it." The young novice monk seemed to understand. Liaochen continued, "In the future, when you travel thousands of miles of mountains and rivers with your feet, you will be used to the misery of the world. Naturally, you will not be surprised." Zhang Ping felt that his worldview had been ruthlessly reshaped. After a few days, Wei Si's sickly appearance had disappeared. Instead, he was the one who was conflicted. Besides, when Jiang Pingji led the people to Xiangyang district, they met many mobs along the way. But how could the unorganized and undisciplined mobs compare to the well-equipped imperial guards and the troops who were strong and capable in battle? With nearly 20,000 people, the marching speed was naturally not fast. Jiang Pingji was not in a hurry either. They walked during the day and rested after 3 meals. At night, they camped out for the night. Even the elderly and children could easily keep up with the troops. None of the injured people were left behind. It was another night in the open. The troops that were sent to Xiangyang district to spearhead the attack returned in a sorry state. When Jiang Pingji heard the news, she hurriedly sent someone over to report. Hearing that, she almost exploded. "What?" Jiang Pingji's voice suddenly rose. "You said that bastard occupied my Xiangyang district?" Chapter 404. Lengjun be refined. Pay attention to your image. Su Ke couldn't help but cover his face. Was this the true face of a noble son of an aristocratic family? Feng Jin, who valued rules the most, secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, she said lousy instead of Laonyang. Otherwise, how would it have ended? Jiang Pingji calmed down for a while. She took a deep breath and suppressed the rising anger in her heart. She said to the troop with a cold face, "Don't be afraid. Tell me all the information you found." However, Jiang Pingji's aura was too fierce. The troop was scared out of his wits. He only found his voice after 2 breaths. "I obeyed your orders and went to Xiangyang district to gather information. However, when I arrived at the border of Xiangyang district, I found something wrong. I found many corpses of the people. They were all with their families. Their corpses were exposed in the wilderness. The cause of death was not due to the earthquake, nor was it due to hunger or disease. After some identification, they were all killed by axes, hatchets, sticks, or other heavy objects." Once he started talking, the soldier was no longer nervous. His speech was smooth and clear. He continued cupping his fists and reported, "Not only that, after many investigations, we found that these citizens must have encountered enemies that far outnumbered them during their escape. They were surrounded and beaten to death by the enemy without much struggle. Most of the men died tragically. The women or girls were dragged to the side and suffered different degrees of humiliation before dying tragically. Such evil deeds are despicable. It was not wrong to say that they were a mob. The scouting troop found many such corpses at the border of Xiangyang district. Not only did they die a miserable death, but their clothes and valuables were also crudely snatched. Many of them were unclothed and their bodies were exposed to the scorching sun. They died with their eyes wide open." Jiang Pingji listened calmly. Her expression did not change at all. However, the surrounding atmosphere was slightly solemn. The audience in the streaming room also stopped chatting. It was as if they were infected by the solemn and austere atmosphere. They could not help but straighten their backs and wait solemnly. Jiang Pingji's voice became colder. "Continue." The subordinate said, "We pretended to be refugees. After we entered Xiangyang district, we were interrogated a few times. After a few rounds of probing, we found out that 3 days after the earthquake, Xiangyang district had already been occupied by the Tsing-Yi army. They even took over the Xiangyang district mansion." "Tsing-Yi army?" Feng Jin muttered as he sat at the side. He didn't expect a motley crew to be able to break through Xiangyang district. The district headquarters of Xiangyang district was very poor, but they more or less kept some soldiers. In addition to the servants kept by the local gentry and wealthy families, there should be at least 1,000 or 2,000 soldiers in total, if not 3 or 5,000. These people were faced with a group of rioters armed with hoes, choppers, and axes. How could they lose so easily? Apart from that, is there any other specific information? Jiang Pengji furrowed her brows. In her heart, she wished that she could ride on white and charge over. To her, what was hers was hers. What she fancied was also hers. Whoever dared to extend their claws into her territory, she would chop off their claws with one claw. Not only that, according to the troops' description, the members of the Tsing-Yi army were not good at all. She was now the district magistrate of Xiangyang district. Xiangyang district was her territory. The people there were under her protection. The Tsing-Yi army really did not care about their lives. The subordinate said, "We waited in Xiangyang district for 2 days and discovered that the Tsing-Yi army were not ordinary rioters. They had a leader who was known as the 9th general of the Tsing-Yi army. He was tall and sturdy and held 2 huge axes in his hands. The main gate of the district headquarters of Xiangyang district was smashed by his axes. All the officials in Xiangyang district were murdered. The gentry and wealthy families were wiped out. There were countless deaths and injuries." The tragic scene that the troops saw was not just that. It was even more unsightly. The leader of the Tsing-Yi army searched the houses of the gentry and wealthy families. The men who were taller than the shaft of the carriage were all beheaded. Those who were shorter were used as prostitutes. As for the women, not only were they tied together with hemp ropes, but they were also ordered to show their naked bodies and be used as the Tsing-Yi army's military prostitutes. All members of the Tsing-Yi army had the right to enjoy it. If anyone resisted, most of them would die without a complete corpse. The troops did not hide anything. They told her everything they saw and knew. Jiang Pengji smiled coldly and crushed the ceramic bowl in her hand. Even Feng Jin, who was usually calm and collected, had a murderous look on his face. The audience in the streaming room then completely reacted. It was the start of a war. Inyang Kuaishan, didn't they say that the Tsing-Yi army were the people from before? Why are they so heartless? Tudo beef shredded Gafen. These evil deeds are not done by humans. They are a bunch of king beasts. Gui Kai Guo Fengxiu. Although I also feel that the Tsing-Yi army is not human but a bunch of beasts, did you listen carefully to the troops' report? Personally, I think it's horrifying to think about it. The Tsing-Yi army's origins are most likely bandits or robbers. The earthquake this time almost caused Wanzhou to collapse. The imperial court just moved the capital. If it wasn't for the streamer's report, I reckon even the people in Shangjing would have died. Due to the word limit, the audience member typed another paragraph at lightning speed. Gui Kai Guo Fengxiu. The Dongqing royal families in action, the emperor's fatuity and scoundrel became the last straw that drove these rioters crazy. Therefore, they raised their machetes and shoulder poles and took revenge crazily. They even committed such atrocities that go against humanity. By the way, the real ancient war was far crueler than this. If you don't believe me, you can check the 5 barbarians Luanhua to see what a 2-legged sheep is. Lao Cg Lianmeng. I have a hunch that the streaming from now on will be very bloody. Young people who can bear it should stop streaming as soon as possible to avoid psychological trauma. Besides, regardless of whether the Tsing-Yi army was once a victim, this is not a reason for them to be violent. The bullet screen almost covered the entire virtual screen. The comments were almost a page per second. Jiang Pengji did not have time to look at those records. She already had the intention to kill. The foreign rioters came to her territory and killed her people. If she did not kill them back, how could she be satisfied? Feng Jin saw through her thoughts. He looked down and said, "Lanting, we still have 2,000 troops in Fengyi County for disaster relief. Now we only have 1,000 troops and 1,000 imperial guards with us. All of them have traveled a long distance and are exhausted. However, there are more than 10,000 rioters from the Tsing-Yi army. If we want to attack Xiangyang district, we must not act willfully and recklessly. We need to formulate a comprehensive plan. At least, you have to settle down the people who follow you." "I know." Jiang Pengji clasped her fingers together as if she was deep in thought. If she did not bring nearly 20,000 people from Shangjing, she would have directly counted her men and killed her way to Xiangyang district. Attack and defense were two completely different concepts, especially when the defending side had many people and could also rely on the terrain of the houses. Chapter 405. To attack Xiangyang district, the first problem they faced was the disparity in numbers. This Tsing-Yi army claims to have tens of thousands of people, but most of them are commoners. Their weapons are nothing more than choppers and axes. They don't have any armor and have no military discipline. Compared to them, both the troops and the imperial guards are considered elite soldiers. Feng Jin was the first to speak. He tried to build up their fighting spirit to increase their morale. If we fight, we can fight. In reality, there was a disparity in strength between 2,000 and 10,000 people. However, their morale must not be low, or else they would not be able to fight. Qiguan Rang squinted his eyes as if he was thinking about something. After a while, seeing that no one spoke, he broke the silence. His dark eyes fell on Jiang Pingji. Are you worried that we can't attack Xiangyang district? Jiang Pingji heard his words and loosened her interlocked fingers. She snorted contemptuously. Her tone was filled with arrogance. In the words of the audience in the streaming room, it was asking for a beating. 10,000 ants, a motley crew. What is there to be afraid of? She did not even bother to conceal the contempt in her words. In her eyes, let alone 10,000 Tsing-Yi army, even if there were 10 times or 100 times more, ants would still be ants. Quantitative change could not promote qualitative change. She was once the commander of the Federal Army, commanded the most elite troops of the Federation and fought against the most tyrannical enemies. Would she be afraid of this? What a joke! Qiguan Rang waved his feather fan to disperse the heat in the tent. He smiled. Since you have such a fighting spirit, I am not worried. They were not afraid of arrogance, but they were afraid of cowardice. Jiang Pingji was the backbone of the group. If even she wavered, it would inevitably shake the hearts of the people. If you have any opinions, speak up one by one. Let's work together. Jiang Pingji's expression did not look like she was about to start a war. Instead, she looked very relaxed. But if one really knew her, one would definitely notice that she was unusually serious. As a qualified commander, she would not retreat just because the enemy was strong, nor would she be arrogant and conceited just because the enemy was weak. Regardless of whether the Tsing-Yi army had 10,000 or 1,000 people, she would treat it seriously. Everyone looked at each other. They were somewhat surprised by Jiang Pingji's casual attitude. For example, Suku. He thought that based on Jiang Pingji's temper, she would be burning with rage and clamor to kill. But what happened? She was calmer than everyone else. The Tsing-Yi army has already occupied Xiangyang district. It looks like they have the upper hand, but that's not the case. Suku glanced around. Seeing that they had no intention to speak, he decided to speak first. Xiangyang district has a vast land, the walls are continuous, the walls are tall and thick, there were 6 gates when it was first built. If we attack the city, the Tsing-Yi army will certainly dispatch troops to guard everywhere. Once the troops are distributed, we don't have to worry about the number of people guarding the city. Jiang Pingji nodded and said, but the point is we don't have any siege weapons, and we don't even know how many reserves Xiangyang district has. Meng Hun scratched his head and said, the Tsing-Yi army is a mob. Most of the leaders are fugitives and the rest are ordinary people. Even if he knew how to use the machine, how much power could he unleash? If we can catch them off guard and burn their defensive items in advance, it will save us a lot of trouble. Facing these undisciplined fellows, numbers might seem intimidating, but after analyzing the situation, there was nothing to be afraid of. If the Tsing-Yi army chose to defend the city, they would be at an advantage. If they chose to confront each other, they would be at a disadvantage. With regards to Meng Hun's suggestion, Feng Jin and Suku both shook their heads and rejected it. The defensive equipment must not be burned or destroyed. Their goal was to take down Xiangyang district, but once they got rid of the Tsing-Yi army, it was hard to guarantee that there would not be a second or third army. They did not have many people on their side. If they did not have the help of the defensive equipment, they would have to sacrifice a lot to defend the city. At this time, they were short of manpower. It would be heartache to lose a few soldiers. If they had the help of the defensive equipment, the pressure would be greatly reduced. The suggestion was rejected. Meng Hun could only scratch his head in embarrassment and simply wait for them to come to a conclusion. In reality, regardless of Su Ku, Feng Jin or Qiguan Rang, each of them had their own ideas, but there were drawbacks. Especially Qiguan Rang, this person had always been good at treachery. Now he kept his mouth shut, not because he had no other way, but because he could not say it. Jiang Pengji's reputation was so good, it was not suitable for her to be tainted by violence and bloodshed for the time being. Feng Jin and Su Ku were the same. They already had a decision in their hearts. They could definitely take down Xiangyang district quickly. Due to various concerns, they could only put these ideas aside for the time being and find a more appropriate way. Faced with their silence, the audience in the streaming room was anxious and anxious. They were simply on the verge of exploding. Inyang Kuaishan, streamer, say something about fighting. I don't see you guys discussing it much. Tado Nyo Gaizhong fan, I'm so nervous, even through the screen, I feel like a storm is brewing. In Yueja Zhuge Qinma, why are you guys panicking? How could war in ancient times be so simple? The streamer doesn't understand the terrain of Xiangyang district, they don't understand the situation in the city, they don't understand the division of troops in the city. How can they fight when they don't know anything? Sugarless Minty, since they don't have this information, then what are they talking about? In Yueja Zhuge Qinma, how would I know? Dashing Jua, to the person above, it's a waste of your ID. Bill Gates, what's wrong with ID? I took this ID now, does it mean I have to be the richest man in the world? The topic changed. This also eased the atmosphere in the streaming room. It was not as hostile as before. Jiang Pingji tilted her head, her gaze sweeping across the faces of the three people. She understood that they were worried about her benevolent reputation. Hence, she said calmly, I'm not someone who cares about my reputation. If I can end the battle quickly, I'll do it quickly. Finishing, she added, don't be fooled by my frail appearance. If we really fight, I can smash the city gate with one punch. Therefore, whether it's to lure the enemy out of the city to encroach on them or directly attack the city gate, it's actually all possible. Everyone, smash the city gate with one punch? Feng Jin coughed awkwardly. It seemed like he did not expect his partner to be so arrogant. Since she had already said so, naturally there was no need to be restrained. In my opinion, why not lure the enemy out of the city and kill them? As he spoke, he squinted his eyes slightly, a change from his usual gentle appearance. Now he looked dangerous and cold. Feng Jin continued, order the 3,000 commoners and 500 soldiers to disguise themselves, bring along the military supplies, and lure a portion of the Tsing-Yi army out of the city, to the ambush place. A few days ago, I listened to Lanting's words. I read it humbly. I know there's an excellent call near Xiangyang district. The two sides of the call are easy to hide. The mouth of the call is narrow on the outside and wide on the inside. If we lure the Tsing-Yi army in, rocks will fall from both sides. It will not be easy for them to retreat. His tone was calm, but the audience in the streaming room heard it and had goosebumps. He was planning to trap them at the mouth of the call and smash them all into minced meat. Chapter 406. A few days later, in the district headquarters of Xiangyang district. General Jiao, have a taste of this aged wine. This was the original district magistrate's most treasured wine. A jar is worth hundreds of taels of silver. In my opinion, only a valiant and imposing man like the general is worthy of such fine wine. I'll serve it for you. The brown-clothed steward had a flattering smile on his face. He bent his back and bent his knees to pour wine for a burly man with a full beard. The man looked to be in his early 30s. His shoulders were extremely broad and the muscles on his body were like huge boulders. They were strong and muscular. His palms were wide and rough like a cattail leaf fan. The big bowl in his hands seemed to be pocket-sized and delicate. He was leaning on the seat of honor, holding two naked women in his arms. There was not a single part of their skin that was unharmed. The man used his free hand to fondle the women's bodies, and not long after, a brand new red mark was left. The two women were terrified. They could only bite their lower lips and shiver. They dared not resist or make a sound. This is considered fine wine? It doesn't taste much better than what I've drunk before. The man took a sip. His ferocious face hardened. He spat out all the wine in his mouth and threw the wine bowl in his hands to pieces. The man was rough and burly. He looked like a small mountain of flesh as he sat there. He alone was equivalent to 4 of them. The brown-clothed steward was so frightened that his legs trembled. He almost threw the jar of wine in his arms to the ground. "Get lost, you useless coward. Don't hinder me from enjoying myself." The man waved his large palm and pushed the brown-clothed steward away. He did not use much strength, but the other party fell backward and rolled around violently. He fell so hard that even his teeth were loose. Seeing this, the man laughed heartily. His voice was like thunder. Even standing outside the courtyard, one could hear the man's presumptuous laughter. The brown-clothed steward staggered up and limped away. Behind him, the sound of 2 women sobbing and panting could be faintly heard. This was originally the residence of the district magistrate of Xiangyang district. The 2 beautiful women inside were the beloved concubines of a wealthy merchant in Xiangyang district. As for the man seeking pleasure inside, he was the leader of the Tsing-Yi army, General Jiu. Just as Feng Jin and the rest had said, the leader of the Tsing-Yi army was originally a bandit from the mountains. Usually, he was full of evil deeds. If it wasn't for the disaster caused by the earthquake, the Dongqing royal family courted death and moved the capital, which caused the people to seethe with resentment. They might still be entrenched in the mountains and engaged in the business of robbing houses. Now that they had risen up in revolt, they were instead sought after by a large number of commoners. With a shake of their bodies, they proclaimed themselves generals, and could be said to be in high spirits. The so-called 9 generals of the Tsing-Yi army, who gave themselves the title of Flying Tiger, were originally just villagers in the mountains. One day, when he was drunk, his lust was aroused and he molested his neighbor's daughter. Encountering strong resistance from the other party, he killed her by mistake. Because he was afraid of being arrested and thrown into prison, he could only flee in panic. In the end, he became a bandit, living in a house that he once couldn't get close to, sleeping with a woman who once only appeared in his dreams. There was no need to mention how carefree and unrestrained his life was. Report: General Jiu was having fun when a member of the Tsing-Yi army came to deliver a message. Displeased, he got up from the woman's body and shouted, "What report? What happened this time?" Reporting to General, "We found a big fish outside the city." That person smiled and raised his head. He was originally General Jiu's trusted aide from the bandits' lair, so he was not afraid of General Jiu, who had killed countless people. "According to my brothers, it should be the cook who transported the supplies for the imperial court." "The imperial court?" General Jiu's heart trembled and he asked, "How many people?" "About 3,000 people, most of them were injured. They must have fought with someone and barely managed to escape." The messenger continued, "There are at least 100 wagons transporting the supplies. We secretly went to the places they passed by to check, and all that was spilled was rice." When General Jiu heard this number, he could not help but be tempted, but after being tempted, he felt a little worried. 3,000 people? Isn't that too many people? The messenger continued, "General Jiu, don't worry. Among the 4,000 people, 70 to 80% are commoners who fled for their lives. The rest of the soldiers were also wounded. These rations were probably sent by the idiots in Shangjing to other places for disaster relief." After the establishment of the Tsing-Yi army, they repeatedly robbed Jiang Pingji's troops and seized a lot of rations. In the eyes of these bandits, rather than using the rations to save those half-dead commoners, it was better to let them have it. The Tsing-Yi army rose up in revolt for the sake of the commoners. "General, in my opinion, they want to pass through Longhu Boardwalk. If we let them pass, it will be difficult for us to chase after them." After passing through Longhu Boardwalk, it was the territory of Chengde County. There were also a few troops of the Tsing-Yi army there. This fat piece of meat would be taken by others. General Jiu thought about it and asked, "How much rations do we have?" The messenger replied, "We plundered quite a lot of money, but we didn't eat much. Many of our brothers are still tightening their belts." In terms of rations, there was actually quite a lot, but it could not withstand the over 10,000 members of the Tsingyi army. Everyone ate to their heart's content. After a few days, their rations were almost depleted. If it was not the autumn harvest season, the granaries and grain depots of every household would not have enough rations. If this continued, they would starve again. General Jiu frowned and said impatiently, "Then bring your brothers and intercept their rations. Don't let other people take advantage of them." The messenger was delighted. General Jiu's words meant that he would not take action. Thinking of the contents of the report from his subordinates, he could not help but be ecstatic. That group of people transported a lot of rations. The commoners who followed them to escape were all packed with money. There was a lot of profit to be made from them. "General, how many brothers should I bring to intercept the rations?" "Just bring 3,000. General Jiu originally wanted to say 4,000, but he thought that most of those people were commoners and their combat power should not be strong. Order received. The Tsingyi army had been sending people to keep an eye on the troop transporting rations. Once they gathered enough men, they could leave the city to pursue them. Less than 2 hours after leaving the city, they could faintly see that group of people walking towards Longhu boardwalk like ants. They seemed to have experienced a fierce battle. Everyone was injured and looked exhausted. They walked very slowly. Transporting a large amount of rations was not fast. In addition, there were thousands of commoners dragging the troop down. Their speed was as slow as a tortoise. I thought we had to delay for half a day before the fish would take the bait. I didn't expect them to come so quickly. Meng Hun noticed the movement from afar. He used his hand to shade himself from the sun and quietly turned his head. His sharp eyes discovered the traces of the Tsingyi army chasing behind him. Su Ku smiled and said, "Don't say any more. Let's go. Lang Jun is ready." He wore a brown short shirt and was dressed like a commoner. He wore a pair of straw sandals that were almost worn out. He looked very down and out. "Do you know how many people they have?" Su Ku pressed the bamboo hat on his head and asked Meng Hun. Chapter 407. Pick up the pace. Meng Hun waved his hand and the huge troops sped up a little. They had rested well, but the Tsingyi army had rushed all the way and were exhausted. Now that the weather was scorching hot, they used up more energy than them. "Deputy General, they seem to have discovered us." The pursuing Tsingyi army realized something was wrong. The leading bandit was General Jiu's confidant. Seeing the situation, they knew it was bad. "Don't let them pass the Longhu boardwalk. Chase after them. Let's catch them like turtles in a jar." The Dragon Tiger boardwalk connected Fengyi County and Chengde County. Usually, many caravans would pass through here in order to save time. The road here had also been repaired several times. However, it was narrow and could only allow 2 supply wagons to pass side by side. It took a lot of time for 100 carriages to pass one by one. The Tsingyi army and Meng Hun were getting closer and closer. Meng Hun snorted and said, "Troops, line up. Take 50 steps forward and load the crossbows. Escort the people to pass first." 200 troops listened to the order and stepped out to block the narrow road. 50 people in a row, they took out their bows and loaded the arrows. After waiting for the people and the carriages to pass, the Tsingyi army was less than 200 steps away from them. "First row. Second row forward." With a buzzing sound, 50 arrows shot towards the Tsingyi army with a strong momentum. The leading Tsingyi army naturally saw the troops' actions, but they did not care and continued to chase. At such a distance, even the best archers might not be able to shoot over. Poof, poof, poof. In the next moment, the sound of arrows piercing flesh was heard. Fresh blood splattered. The Tsingyi army soldiers who were shot were still charging forward. With a thud, they fell to the ground. Some arrows even killed 2 people, colluding with each other. Second row. Third row forward. Following Meng Hun's order, the 4 rows of improved crossbows connected perfectly. After a round of shooting, a small group of Tsing-Yi army soldiers in front was already lying on the ground. At that moment, both parties were less than 150 steps away. When the fourth platoon shot their arrows, the first platoon had already loaded their arrows and returned to the first platoon. "Line up, fire," Meng Hun calmly commanded, making the troops feel at ease. Even their hands holding the improved crossbows no longer trembled. These troops had all seen blood. They were led by Meng Hun to kill bandits all over the mountains. But how many bandits were there in a village? There were 3,000 members of the Tsing-Yi army in front of them. Not to mention their combat power, just their posture made their legs go weak. Fortunately, Meng Hun was a man who had seen much of the world. As the former commandant of the Meng family, what had he not seen? Under his supervision, the 2 rounds of shooting were completed perfectly. In order to lure the enemy, each troop only carried 2 or 3 arrows in their quiver. During the second round of shooting, the 4 troops retreated in an orderly manner, leaving behind hundreds of corpses of the Tsing-Yi army. Caught off guard, General Jiao's confidant's face turned livid, and anger burned in his chest. "Their quiver is empty, continue chasing. When we catch up to them, we won't leave a single one alive." His words made the timid Tsing-Yi army regain their confidence. They chased like a hive of bees to the mouth of the mountain. 300 meters ahead, the people who were escorting the supply wagons and the people who were running for their lives were already in a mess. When he saw that, he was ecstatic. "Wait a little longer. Wait for everyone to come in." Jiang Pengji held a weed in her mouth and sneered. She crouched on the top of a hill at the side. She was very satisfied with the troops' performance just now. Luo Yue watched the whole process and felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that Jiang Pengji's troops were of good quality. They usually obeyed orders and had the demeanor of elite troops. He also knew that almost every troop carried a strange-looking crossbow on their back and valued the crossbow like it was their wife. However, he had never thought that the seemingly unimpressive troop would be able to produce such a powerful force after they worked together. At that distance just now, even the well-trained Imperial Guards could not guarantee that they would not panic. "Lang Jun, you are a gambler. This is not a good habit." Feng Jin looked at the situation below. The Tsing-Yi army at the front was less than 100 meters away from the troops. If they went overboard, the 200 troops below would be annihilated by the Tsing-Yi army. "If we don't sacrifice our children, we won't be able to catch the wolf. I don't intend to let the Tsing-Yi army return alive." Jiang Pengji sneered. They dared to occupy her Xiangyang district. She did not care about the members of the Tsing-Yi army. No matter who they were, they all deserved to die. "Troops, load up the crossbows." Meng Hun ordered again, "Retreat while fighting." The troops who originally did not have arrows took out arrows from the bottom of the supply wagons one by one. They loaded the arrows skillfully and lined up. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The arrows flew out and the Tsing-Yi army in front of them were riddled with holes. The mouth of the mountain was narrow. The deeper they went, the more spacious it became. The troops could stand side by side with 30 people, but the Tsing-Yi army could only stand side by side with 10 people. In order to lure the Tsing-Yi army into the mountain, the troops shot in an orderly manner while retreating to make more space. However, the Tsing-Yi army were not stupid. They directly picked up the dead bodies in front of them and used them as shields to quickly shorten the distance between them. Falling rocks. Jiang Pengji snorted coldly. Countless rocks fell from the top of the mountain. "Seal the mouth." After a round of falling rocks, the Tsing-Yi army was already in a daze. Their screams filled the narrow mountain. The Tsing-Yi army realized that they were ambushed. Many of them wanted to turn around and retreat. However, the mouth of the mountain was narrow and there were huge rocks falling from above. The mouth of the mountain was blocked and the way of retreat was also blocked. "Troops, load up the crossbows." "Shoot." Jiang Pengji ordered. The 800 troops lying in ambush at the top of the mountain did as she said. A round of shooting wiped out the Tsing-Yi army on the ground. Bright red blood, chunks of flesh, and broken limbs covered the mountain. The tragic and deafening screams gradually subsided. Jiang Pengji kept the live stream on. The audience could clearly see the situation at the bottom of the mountain through the ultra-high-definition camera. Many of the Tsing-Yi army members died with a look of horror and fear. Their eyes were wide open. Some of them were smashed into meat paste. Some of them had half of their bodies destroyed. Broken limbs were scattered all over the ground. Fresh blood dyed the rocks red. Some of it seeped into the mud. Another part of it gathered into a blood-red stream. It was like a wriggling red snake. The valley was filled with the pungent smell of blood. It was a silent accusation of the tragic massacre that happened not long ago. Tomato scrambled eggs. Just now. I hugged the toilet bowl and vomited. Lao Ciji Lianmeng. Fighting for land, killing is everywhere. Fighting for a city, killing is everywhere. This is only on a scale of 3,000 people. Those who can't stand it, quit the live stream as soon as possible. Otherwise, you will be traumatized. Qingshui Chu Furong. Is there really a need for such a bloody and cruel live stream to exist? Won't it instigate a large number of criminals? Why hasn't it been banned yet? This streamer has killed people. You viewers are also the executioners. Jiang Pingji lowered her eyes. The corners of her mouth still held some coldness. Host V. Qingshui Chu Furong, I can't stand it anymore. Get lost. She hadn't argued for a long time. Did they really think that she was a good-tempered streamer? They were just spectators watching the show. She got along well with some viewers without any issues of principle, but it didn't mean that she liked the entire audience in the live stream. Don't use your high and mighty attitude to tell me what to do. Chapter 408. Troops, clean up the battlefield. Retrieve all the arrows that can be retrieved. Jiang Pengji spat out the wild grass in her mouth. She stood straight and looked into the distance. She could faintly see the city standing on the horizon. Clean up the battlefield, then set up camp and rest. Once we're full, we'll attack the city at night. Feng Jin frowned. Attack the city at night? That's not appropriate. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, it's very disadvantageous for us to fight at night, but it's even more disadvantageous for them. Feng Jin opened his mouth and wanted to stop Jiang Pingji from taking the risk. They had too few troops on hand and could not afford to gamble. Don't worry, Hui. I'm not a brainless boar. Since we've decided to attack the city at night, we have a certain degree of confidence. Jiang Pingji's troops were not limited to one type of soldier. Instead, they were more versatile. The training plan she gave was very complicated and heavy. Every troop's food was as balanced as possible. These people were supervised by Chief Meng Hun to train hard. They had a certain degree of night fighting ability. Many people in ancient times had varying degrees of night blindness because of the unbalanced nutrition of their food. Especially the people who were born into poverty, they often had no food to fill their stomachs during natural disasters and droughts. Not to mention the pursuit of balanced nutrition. The proportion of people with night blindness was very high. Since Jiang Pingji was determined to conquer the 9 states and pursue the position of hegemon, how could she not do anything? She did not waste the 3 years she spent in Langyi. Fighting at night, the enemy weakened while we strengthened. 1,000 troops could unleash a considerable combat power. Luo Yue led the Imperial Guards to help the troops clean up the battlefield. This time, the troops contributed the most to killing the Tsing-Yi army. The Imperial Guards, on the other hand, were like decorations. He took the initiative to look for Jiang Pingji and asked, "Is there anything I can do for you?" Jiang Pingji said, "Of course there is. I've entrusted the safety of tens of thousands of people to you." Luo Yue opened his mouth a few times. He wanted to join in the attack at night, but the words were stuck on the tip of his tongue and he could not say it. She led her troops to charge and kill the enemy. His Imperial Guards would protect them from behind. Anyone with a discerning eye would know which side was safer. Jiang Pingji looked at Luo Yue and asked with concern, "Is there anything else?" Luo Yue shook his head and said, "No, I won't disturb you anymore." The corpses of 3,000 members of the Tsing-Yi army were moved to the entrance of the mountain, covered with dry and flammable straw, and burned to ashes. Jiang Pingji ordered her men to burn the corpses and clean them up. No one objected. There was no need to pay too much attention to the enemy's corpse. Now that it was a hot summer day, the corpses would easily attract mosquitoes and flies, and they would rot very quickly. If they were not dealt with as soon as possible, there would be an epidemic. Lang Jun had emphasized it again and again, so naturally, no one would argue with her. When they set up camp on the spot and cleaned up the battlefield, they found a few horses on the side of the Tsing-Yi army. However, these horses were either dead or seriously injured. Jiang Pingji ordered people to slaughter these horses and boil them into meat soup. She then sent it to the people who cooperated with them. The commoners were still in shock. To be honest, they were not very willing to be bait. After all, they were risking their lives. However, when they found out that the troops had cooked food for them after setting up camp, and even slaughtered horses to make meat soup, and that the people who had been fighting for the whole afternoon were still hungry. For a moment, many people's eyes turned red, and the little bit of resentment in their hearts disappeared, and they couldn't help but feel ashamed. Jiang Pingji, on the other hand, did not have much emotion. She took the meat porridge from the troops and gulped it down. In ancient times, seasonings were very scarce. Now that they were on the march, they brought some salt at most, but it really didn't taste very good. However, there was nothing to be picky about. Even Feng Jin, a serious aristocrat, did not complain, so Jiang Pingji would not complain. Qiguan Rang had already brought the remaining people to meet up with Jiang Pingji. Rang saw the flames from afar. I think Lang Jun won a big victory this time. Qiguan Rang no longer looked like a refined scholar. The wooden clogs on his feet had been replaced by thick straw sandals. His clothes had also become brown, which made it easier for him to move. His black hair was tied up with hemp rope made of straw. Except for his temperament, he looked like a farmer. Indeed, thanks to the enemy's stupidity, we won with ease. Jiang Pingji got up and hung the broadsword on her waist. She also picked 2 short swords that were 1 foot long and placed them in a convenient position. The broadsword was usually hung in the room as a decoration. Today, she finally used it to kill the enemy. Qiguan Rang handed Jiang Pingji a bow and a quiver of arrows. Lang Jun, you must be careful tonight. If anything happened to her, everyone present would probably break up and their future would be bleak. Just wait for my good news. Jiang Pingji smiled, took the bow and arrows, and carried them on her back. The quiver was also filled with arrows. Her long hair was tied into a ponytail with a hair tie and then tied with a cloth. She looked elegant and neat. Looking at her current attire, she was like a free and easy ranger who walked out of a street story instead of a well-read scholar. Jiang Pingji suddenly thought of something and added a sentence. Oh yes, the 3,000 members of the Tsing-Yi army were all buried here. They may have sent people out of the city to investigate. Be careful of a night attack. Qiguan Rang could see the flames rising from the call from afar. It was hard to guarantee that the Tsing-Yi army in the city did not notice. It was better to be safe than sorry. Since Jiang Pingji brought the people of Shangjing out, she had the responsibility to ensure their safety. Qiguan Rang solemnly bowed with his hands folded in front. Don't worry, Lang Jun. I swear to guard this place with my life and quietly wait for your good news. With the few of you guarding the rear, I definitely won't worry. Jiang Pingji certainly could not bring the few literati along for the night attack. She might as well let them lead 1,000 imperial guards to protect the people. The terrain here was higher and they could see in all directions. If the Tsing-Yi army tried to launch a sneak attack, they could rely on the terrain to resist for a long time. Troops, depart. When the sun gradually set in the west, the hot wind gradually cooled. Jiang Pingji and the others could already see the tall city walls. In another place, the Tsing-Yi army guarding the city had long noticed the unusual smoke in the distance and informed General Jiao about it. General Jiao held a banquet in the district magistrate's residence for the meritorious officials. He drank wine and ate meat in big mouthfuls. He watched beautiful women dance. If he was excited, he would directly pull one into his arms for fun. The entire hall was filled with the fragrance of wine and meat, as well as the smell of lust. Even from afar, one could hear the rough and unbridled laughter of the men and the trembling pleas of the women. What's the big deal? General Jiao was bare-chested, revealing his muscular upper body. He held a beauty in his left hand and took a bite of a thick drumstick in his right hand. He said nonchalantly, "It's so hot these days. Isn't it normal for fires to start anywhere?" The Tsing army soldier who reported opened his mouth and said hesitantly, "The deputy general who left the city in the afternoon hasn't returned yet." General Jiao sneered. "Why you so worried? Maybe they'll achieve a complete victory and divide the spoils." They all came from the same bandit nest. He knew the deputy general's greedy temperament very well. The soldier who reported wanted to say something, but General Jiao became impatient and threw the chicken drumstick in his hand at his face. "Get lost. Don't be an eyesore here." Not long after, the hall resumed its original lively atmosphere. Chapter 409. The golden crow fell and dyed the sky orange. The sky gradually darkened, and there were no torches on the city wall yet. Jiang Pingji led the troops to lie in ambush outside the city, calmly waiting for the right time to strike. A sense of dreariness pressed down on everyone's hearts. Facing the cold, kind, and honest Meng Hun, the troops still dared to joke with him after they had completed their training. The overall atmosphere was not very solemn. However, Jiang Pingji was the leader this time. She did not say any unnecessary words, nor did she deliberately show her majesty with a straight face. She only needed to glance at the troops with her calm eyes, and they could not help but straighten their backs and tense their nerves. After a long time, some of them came back to their senses and were shocked to find that their palms were sweating nervously. Different generals bring out different soldiers. This saying was indeed true. Jiang Pingji looked up at the sky. "The moon might not be too bright tonight. You stay here. I will go and clean up the sentries on the city wall. Pay attention to the ambush and don't expose yourself." Jiang Pingji measured the distance between the city wall and the city wall with her eyes and began to calculate the safest route in her mind. Her dark eyes seemed to brighten a little. The troops wanted to intercept her, but Meng Hun did not agree. After all, it was too dangerous. As Jiang Pingji's private troops, they could not let her get hurt even if they all died here. Jiang Pingji glanced at the troops and sneered. "Look carefully. As a member of the Lu's troop, you know what you should do. Real elite troops are not qualified by holding a modified crossbow." She took 2 bundles of ropes and stomped on the ground. Her body was agile and light, and her speed was even more astonishing. Like the most agile black cat, she freely shuttled through the shadows that were getting darker and darker. Seeing her desperate move, everyone in the troop held their breath nervously, and their hearts were in their throats. The expected exposure did not happen. They had been through years of systematic training, so they more or less knew the trick. Jiang Pingji arrived at the city gate with ease. She used both her hands to accurately find a foothold. Her body stuck to the wall like a gecko, and she climbed up easily. In less than 2 breaths, she had already climbed half of the way up. Everyone in the troop was stunned. Because of the distance, they could only see a black shadow moving quickly up the city wall. But there was no doubt that it was their Lang Jun. Although the current city walls were mostly made of stones and sand and were not smooth and seamless, it was extremely difficult for her to climb it as easily as if she was walking on flat ground. They widened their eyes nervously, and the audience in the live broadcast room did not dare to use bullet screens. According to the situation of Xiangyang District's city walls, many modern rock climbers could easily climb up. However, this was a battlefield. If they were discovered by the enemy, they would be shot by arrows in the next second. Who could maintain their composure and perform normally under the threat of high pressure? The city walls of Xiangyang District were much shorter than those of Shangjing District. They were not built as neatly and luxuriously. Jiang Pingji did not expend much effort. Sigh. A member of the Tsing army, who was standing guard nearby, yawned. 2 drops of physiological tears squeezed out from the corners of his eyes. Before he could close his mouth, a chill flashed across his neck. Even before the pain could reach his brain, he was already dead. When Jiang Pingji killed the soldier of the Tsing army, she flipped over the city wall. At the same time, she hooked her long leg and threw him off the tower. Puff! The corpse fell off the city wall. Not only was there mud, but there was also lush grass. The sound of the corpse falling was not loud. It was the time to be sleepy. The members of the Tsing-Yi army had been standing guard for a long time. Their reflexes were slower and they could not react at all. Jiang Pingji just stepped onto the city wall. She took out her longbow with one hand and knocked 3 arrows with the other. Puff, puff, thuff, 3 sounds were heard almost at the same time. The arrows pierced through the neck from the side and pierced the trachea. Following that, the 3 corpses of the Tsing-Yi army fell. They did not make any sound before they died. However, the sound of the corpses falling still alerted the members of the Tsing-Yi army who were standing guard. Jiang Pingji turned over and rolled over. She hid in the shadow formed by the teeth of the wall. It was darker there than other places. What's that sound? Someone. Due to the darkening night sky, he did not see clearly what happened. He only realized that the figure 3 feet away from him had disappeared. Just as he took a step forward, something seemed to fall from the archer tower in the distance. He carefully widened his eyes and felt a pain in his throat. An arrow appeared strangely in front of his eyes. His brain did not have time to think about how the arrow came about. His vision turned black and the world spun. Jiang Pingji muttered to herself, "There aren't many archer towers." She swiftly killed the sentries on the 2 archer towers and then dealt with the members of the Tsing-Yi army on the city wall with peace of mind. Jiang Pingji's brain was like a machine that operated according to its condition. She calmly calculated and analyzed the surrounding enemies and their locations. Her assassination speed was frighteningly fast. There was bound to be blood when she attacked. At least 1 life was taken. Within 5 or 6 breaths, the members of the Tsing-Yi army on the city wall had been wiped out by her alone. The audience in the streaming room counted the number of people who had died. They felt their hair stand on end. Jiang Pingji's breathing was still calm. It was impossible to tell that she had killed more than 40 people in a row. She tied 2 bundles of rope to the battlement of the wall and put them down. At that moment, the troops had already started moving. They quickly climbed up the city wall along the ropes. Because Jiang Pingji could only carry a limited amount of rope, the troops who climbed up followed her method to tie new ropes and put them down. Not long after, more than 200 troops had climbed up the city wall. At that moment, the sun had completely set. In another quarter of an hour, it was time to change shifts on the city wall and light up the torches. Jiang Pingji made a few hand gestures. The troops understood. She did not go down the city wall using the stairs. Instead, she pulled a rope and landed quickly in the shadows. Oh! After a short, soft groan, Jiang Pingji broke the necks of the guards at the city gate with her bare hands. She hid their bodies in the shadows of the city entrance. She opened the bolt of the city gate and let the rest of the troops in. Because of the atrocities committed by the Tsing-Yi army, the people did not dare to go out at night. They were afraid that they would lose their lives if they met the mob. The streets were empty. Just as Suku said, there were more than 10,000 members of the Tsing-Yi army in Xiangyang district. It seemed like a lot, but they were divided to guard the various city gates. The troops were scattered and could not be gathered in a short time. They were not a threat at all. Jiang Pingji led the troops into the city without losing a single person. Of course, the ease in the early stage did not mean that the attack would be successful. "Follow me." Jiang Pingji waved her hand. She planned to attack the district headquarters of Xiangyang district directly. After they left, the Tsing-Yi army who arrived late finally discovered the corpses on the city wall and the ropes on the battlement. The enemy attack at the west city gate. A scream of terror broke the silence of the night. When the Tsing-Yi army rushed to the west city gate, Jiang Pingji had already divided her troops into 2 groups. Chapter 410. Feng Jin was right when he said that Jiang Pingji had a strong gambler's mentality. She and Meng Hun split up. In fact, she only brought 50 people with her. The rest of the 900 troops were led by Meng Hun. They were lying in ambush along the only way to the west gate. If Feng Jin knew that she dared to attack the district headquarters with only 50 people, he might faint from anger. The audience in the streaming room did not know whether Feng Jin would faint from anger, but they felt that their hearts could not take it anymore. They knew that the streamer was bold, but they never thought that she would be so bold as to take a detour and attack the district headquarters. Streamer V. To catch bandits, first capture the ringleader. Although I always think this is nonsense, people in this era fall for it. If it was in Jiang Pengji's era, not to mention capture the ringleader, even if a commander died in battle, the soldiers would not stop fighting without an order to stop the war. As the leader, the commander was indeed their belief, but it was not their only belief. Inyang Kuai-xian, but? I mean, what if the leader of the Tsing-Yi army is not in the district headquarters? As soon as the bullet screen was posted, it was immediately drowned by the audience's bullet screen. Lao Ciji Lianmeng, damn, don't say such things at a time like this. It's scary. Shouji Jibao, ba, don't say such things. It's inauspicious. Qingshan Lei Luo, don't say such things. If it comes true and the streamer dies, what will happen to those who are waiting to get clean? The streamer's streaming room has saved countless teenagers, young people, and middle-aged people who have gone astray. When Jiang Pengji's streaming room first appeared, no one believed in the so-called time travel. However, as time went by, the streaming room became very popular. It even caused a viewing craze. However, the number of people in the streaming room was limited. Every slot was extremely precious. Before the streaming room appeared, time travel and a different world were terms in novels. Now that their dreams had come true, one could imagine how attractive it was. Many people could not get a slot in the streaming room, so they could only go to a special official website to watch the recorded videos. Some time ago, a foreign student became a hot topic because of the streaming room. The reason was that he had been thinking about the streaming room day and night. He had unexpectedly quit his stubborn drug addiction. Watching the streaming room and quitting drug addiction had become a well-known meme. Jiang Pengji chuckled. She was now at ease. Not only was her movement unhindered, but she even had the energy to look through the bullet screen. Host V. There must be a big fish in the district headquarters. Didn't you notice that Xiangyang district is pitch black at night? Every household doesn't light up their lights. It's not that they are too poor to afford it, but it's because they don't dare to. The only place that's lit up is the district headquarters of Xiangyang district. Most families would only be willing to light their lanterns after nightfall. Those who lit their lanterns before the night was completely dark usually had two reasons. They were rich and willful, and their family did not lack the money for the lanterns, or they were hosting a banquet for a reason. Jiang Pengji had taken a look at the situation in the city from the top of the city wall. The district headquarters was brightly lit, and the light could be seen from afar. Thinking about the behavior of the Tsing-Yi army and General Jiao's face, it was not difficult to deduce. Therefore, she took a gamble that there was a big fish in the county government. The audience expressed, "That's great. Host, you're so willful. Aren't you afraid of being criticized by the strategists when you get back?" Ko Jiao Chi fan, sigh, let me give you a suggestion. In the future, the host's subordinates shouldn't call you Lord, they should call you Little Princess. Willfulness is a problem that even a real princess can't catch up to. When the bullet screen popped up, the copy party copied it excitedly. The screen full of little princesses gave Jiang Pengji goosebumps. Gui Kai Guo Fengxiu. If you don't want to burn incense at the host's grave on next year's Qingming festival, don't send bullet screens to distract her. Why are the audience making trouble at such a tense moment? His words were useful. The bullet screen slowly decreased until the screen was clear. At that moment, Jiang Pengji and the rest were close to the district headquarters. The news of an enemy attack at the west gate had just reached there. She sneered and drew her bow. She shot an informant who was about to speak. The guard at the entrance of the district headquarters was about to listen to what the informant had to say. In the next second, he saw an arrow piercing through his neck. The sharpened arrowhead was dripping with blood. The informant's eyes were wide open, and his eyeballs were about to pop out of his eye sockets. He died with an expression of disbelief. When the guard saw that, he gathered his qi in his dantian and wanted to shout that the enemy was attacking. However, before he could say, "enemy," his heart and brain were pierced. At that moment, the patrolling guard heard the commotion and walked over. He barely managed to shout the word enemy before he followed his companion's footsteps. Jiang Pengji led her troops over the wall. There were many members of the Tsing-Yi army in the courtyard. She sneered and put away her long bow. She pulled out the sword at her waist. Whether it was close combat or long-range assassination, how could these ordinary people who were forced to do something beyond their abilities be her match? Jiang Pengji rushed to the front. The blade of her long sword drew a silver-white light in the air. Then, it brought about a spray of blood. The perspective of the audience in the streaming room followed Jiang Pengji's movements. While they were excited, they were terrified by Jiang Pengji's ruthlessness. In the past, when they watched television dramas, the main character killed a person with a sword. At most, the main character would cut a wound on the person's chest. Then, the person would die. However, Jiang Pengji was not acting. How could a shallow wound like the one in the television dramas be fatal? With one slash of her sword, the person's body was directly cut into two. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was cutting melons and vegetables. The audience could not imagine how much strength she used. The audience in the streaming room could not imagine it. The troops following her did not even dare to think about it. Jiang Pengji's sword was fast and accurate. Every slash was aimed at the enemy's lifeline. With one slash, the person's brain or upper body was directly cut into two. Not only did blood stain the blade of her sword, but it also washed her hands, clothes, and face into the color of blood. Enemy attack! Enemy! Stop these thieves! The Tsing-Yi army in the district headquarters shouted loudly while they tried to stop the approaching people. Without exception, their bodies were cut into pieces. It was just the distance from the main gate to the entrance. The courtyard was already filled with 40 to 50 corpses. The Tsing-Yi army members who were killed with one slash were basically killed by Jiang Pengji. The corpses looked intact, but those who were lying on the ground struggling for a while before they breathed their last were the work of the troops. No matter how sharp a sword was, the strength needed to cut a person into two with one slash was extremely terrifying. If the sword did not cut the person in half with one slash, the muscles would still be firmly attached to the blade. It could not be pulled out or slashed into the body. It was equivalent to a useless weapon. However, Jiang Pengji did not have this concern. It was not because of how sharp her sword was, but because she was strong enough. Even if it was a blunt sword, she could still cut the person's head and body apart. Along the way, she killed along the way. The troops cooperated closely with each other. In addition, Jiang Pengji, the meat grinder, was clearing the way in front. Surprisingly, no one was killed or injured. In the hall, General Jiu was a little drunk. His subordinates were hugging beauties and swaying from side to side. Hearing the noise outside, General Jiu shook his head and pushed away the beauty lying on his lap. He suppressed his displeasure and scolded the people outside. What happened? Why is it so noisy outside? No one answered, but the paper door clearly showed the panicked figures, revealing everything. Chapter 411. General Jiu stood up abruptly. He was nearly 8 feet tall, and he was as burly as a mountain of flesh. The veins on his arms and forehead bulged. He snorted. His rough face looked slightly ferocious. He grabbed 2 huge copper hammers with both hands. At that moment, the other subordinates in the hall came to their senses one after another. They vaguely noticed the movement outside. One by one, they could not care less about the warm and fragrant bodies. They grabbed a handful of clothes and put them on. However, they had drunk too much and fooled around for too long. Their legs were still a little weak. General Jiu pushed open the door with great force. Coincidentally, a human head flew to his feet and rolled twice. He looked down. The head was revealed to be facing him. A pair of lifeless eyes were wide open, making one's hair stand on end. "Yo, it's really a big fish." At that moment he heard a mocking voice. General Jiu glared at her angrily. Jiang Pengji had been fighting continuously. Her entire body was stained with sticky blood. Her original appearance could not be seen. At that moment, she no longer had the elegance of a gentry in her usual green robes. She was full of ferocity and anger. She was like a ferocious ghost that had crawled out of hell. "Who are you? I don't kill nameless people." General Jiao was still full of confidence because he could see that Jiang Pingji did not bring many people with her. Jiang Pingji's figure and height were very confusing. In many people's opinion, the bullier the body, the greater the strength and the greater the lethality. According to this standard, Jiang Pingji should be a paper doll that could be blown away by the wind. There was nothing to fear. Naturally, he would not really take her seriously. Compared to Jiang Pingji, he was more concerned about the circle of people around her. Each of them was an expert in fighting and killing. Jiang Pingji spat out a mouthful of blood and revealed a wanton and evil smile. A trace of scarlet seemed to flash in her eyes. She did not speak. Instead, she stepped forward and closed the distance between her and General Jiao in an instant. They would start fighting at the slightest disagreement. In a battlefield, who cared about so many tricks? Either you die or you live. General Jiao originally wanted to act pretentious, but he did not expect Jiang Pingji to not play by the rules. She was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. He subconsciously raised the giant hammer in his hand to block the sharp blade. Bang! A teeth-numbing sound of impact could be heard. After one strike, an extremely deep mark was left on the copper hammer that was covered with iron thorns. General Jiao was horrified. The web between his thumb and forefinger split open, and viscous scarlet blood oozed out of the wound, dyeing his palm red. Because of this sudden force, he almost lost his grip on the handle of the hammer. Even so, his mountain-like body was shaken and forced to take 3 or 4 steps back. If he hadn't stabilized his center of gravity, he would have fallen to the ground and lost all his face. General Jiao was overwhelmed with shock. Jiang Pingji held her sword with one hand, and her left hand moved as fast as lightning. She pulled out a 1-foot-long sword from her waist. With a poof, the snow-white blade pierced into someone's neck. This person wanted to ambush her when she was not strong enough, but he did not expect to lose his life first. General Jiao was forced to retreat. In the time it took for him to stabilize his center of gravity, Jiang Pingji had taken 2 lives in a row. Everyone charge! Take him down! Even though General Jiao was a bandit and had committed countless crimes, how could he compare to Jiang Pingji? In the face of Jiang Pingji's irresistible attack, even General Jiao could not help but cower. A few of his subordinates also wanted to take down Jiang Pingji with their advantage in numbers and make a great contribution. After all, she had already left the protection of the troops and entered their encirclement. However, sometimes strength and numbers had nothing to do with each other. Even if General Jiao had more people than Jiang Pingji, it was useless. She was not afraid to fight against 100 people alone. It was as if she had eyes on her back. The sneak attacks of the people did not work at all. The sword in her hand was more like the scythe of the king of Hades. One stab into the heart, temple, or neck, and a person's life was easily taken. General Jiao had nowhere to retreat, so he raised his 2 huge hammers and aimed them at her head. However, she suddenly flipped backward and exerted strength in her feet at the same time. Her body slid backward like a fish, and the horizontal blade in her right hand slashed at General Jiao's knees with great force, cutting off both of his legs. With one hand on the ground, she kicked the wrist of the sneak attacker with both feet, then turned around and stood firm. Holding the sword in her left hand, she slashed at General Jiao's thick neck. Blood splattered. Before the head fell to the ground, she grabbed the hair bun. Blood spurted from the wound and dyed the ground red. General Jiao's eyes were still bulging out of their sockets. His expression was one of shock and horror. As for his body, both of his knees were intercepted and chopped off. His head was separated from his body. The rest of his body fell to the ground with a thud. Jiang Pingji stood in the hall, holding General Jiao's head with her right hand and shouting loudly. "The enemy has been beheaded. Those who surrender will not be killed." Those who still wanted to attack were mercilessly killed by her. The others had lost their will to fight. They were almost scared out of their wits. They could only put down their weapons unwillingly. At that moment, the silent streaming room suddenly exploded with countless bullet screens. Seeing that Jiang Pingji was surrounded by the enemy, the audience in the streaming room felt their hearts in their throats. They almost forgot to breathe. Seeing that she was agile and able to deal with the enemies with ease, they could not help but cheer for her. Some of them were so excited that their faces turned red. Even when they watched the most exciting martial arts movies, they had never enjoyed such a hot-blooded and exciting visual enjoyment. That was because they knew that no matter how real the movie was, it was still fake. Everything in the streaming room was real. Jiang Pingji was fighting a war. It was like walking on a tightrope high up in the sky. If she was not careful, she would fall into hell. She did not want to be beheaded by the enemy, so she could only chop off the enemy's head. From the entrance of the district headquarters to the hall, there were corpses with severed limbs and broken bones. Blood flowed all over the ground. The strong smell of blood filled everyone's nostrils. Those members of the Tsing-Yi army who were lucky enough to survive laid down their weapons and surrendered. They no longer had the will to fight. Just before Jiang Pingji led her people to attack the district headquarters, Meng Hun had also begun the battle. The members of the Tsing-Yi army near the west gate heard the news and rushed over. More and more people came. They did not expect that after the sneak attack at the city gate, the enemy did not leave the area. Instead, they sent a large number of troops to lie in ambush and wait for them to fall into the trap. Archery was a compulsory course for every troop. They spent at least 2 hours a day specially training in this subject. They trained hard every day. The sighting device on the improved crossbows was continuously improved to help them increase the accuracy of their shots. Under such conditions, the troops could not be considered as godly archers, but they could shoot wherever they pointed. Their accuracy was more than 90%. Now, their target was not the moving heads of the Tsing-Yi army, but Meng Hun gestured for the troops to hold their swords. The arrows shot out and the torches of the Tsing-Yi army fell to the ground. In the alley, there were only sporadic flames. The area that the flames illuminated was limited. Everything else was shrouded in darkness. The sudden darkness caused many members of the Tsing-Yi army to panic. In the next second, what awaited them was a torrent of arrows. Not only there, the same scene was playing out in other places. The blood-curdling screams of the members of the Tsing-Yi army before they died reverberated to the sky. There were people who were shot and fell. Not long after, the ground was covered with the corpses of the members of the Tsing-Yi army. After a few rounds of shooting, the ambush spots of the troops were also exposed. The blood-curdling screams attracted more enemies. To avoid increasing casualties, Meng Hun saw the situation and ordered them to retreat while fighting. Retreat for now. A strategic retreat was for the sake of greater victory and minimizing casualties. Chapter 412. Jiang Pingji had mentioned before that most of the people in this era had night blindness. Most of the Tsing-Yi army were blind in the dark without torches. In the eyes of the troops, a group of blind people were just moving human targets. Where did they go? Have you found them? No. Have the thieves escaped? Go over there and look for them. Where are the thieves? Report back as soon as you have any news. The Tsing-Yi army rushed over and held up their torches, illuminating the area as if it was daytime. However, apart from hundreds of corpses, there was no trace of the enemy. The Tsing-Yi army was in a panic. While they were angry, they had an uncontrollable fear of the elusive enemy. Meng Hun smiled when he saw the Tsing-Yi army rushing over in batches. He ordered them to continue the ambush, load the crossbows, and take aim. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In the darkness, the deadly arrows roared out. This time, they did not aim at the torches, but at the heads of the Tsing-Yi army. Poof! The dead did not even have time to scream. A deathly chill spread from the soles of their feet to their whole bodies, and they fell limp to the ground. They are here. Someone noticed the movement and was about to shout a warning, but he did not want to follow in the footsteps of his companions. The range of the improved crossbows gave the troops a great advantage in long-range attacks. The sky was even darker that night. The moon was shrouded in thick dark clouds. They were lying in ambush in the dark, and they were so far away. The Tsing army could not touch them at all. It could be said that the troops had the upper hand. After a few ambushes, the corpses lying in the alleys had piled up. The blood that flowed out converged into a stream, flowing along the cracks of the stone slabs. The night wind blew, bringing with it a strong smell of rust. It told of the tragic battle that had happened here. The Tsing army kept rushing over, and they kept dying. The number of the dead kept increasing. Under such a strong threat of death, many people were on the verge of a mental breakdown and lost their cool. They used to be honest people with hoes, but now they were instigated to pick up choppers and shoulder poles. They became violent mobs. However, their happy life had not lasted for a few days. The soul-reaping envoys came and took away their people one by one. Soon it would be their turn. Seeing that the arrows in his quiver had been exhausted, Meng Hun spat out a mouthful of saliva and pulled out the broadsword from his waist. With a ferocious look in his eyes, he jumped down from the eaves with his saber in hand. Go! A blood-curdling scream was heard. A member of the Tsing army's head was split into two halves from top to bottom. His brain juice and blood splattered everywhere. Meng Hun unsheathed his sword and slashed at another member of the Tsing army without stopping. Behind him, more troops rushed forward. For a time, the alley was in a chaotic battle, and shrill cries resounded without stopping. Directly drawing a sword to fight was not as fast as long-range shooting, but it was undoubtedly more tragic. The troops knew how to cooperate in battle. While the Tsing army was like headless flies, they did not even have any defensive equipment. Even though the Tsing army outnumbered the troops, the battle situation was still one-sided. How could the people nearby sleep soundly when they heard the murderous cries outside? After the earthquake, the already impoverished Xiangyang district was in a state of desolation. Many people died in the earthquake. The people did not have enough food to eat, but the district headquarters did not do anything. Until Xiangyang district was conquered, the Tsing army committed numerous crimes. The people of Xiangyang district were already jittery and panicked. Every household shut their doors tightly, regardless of whether it was day or night. They refused to step out of their doors. Now that the Tsing army was in a chaotic battle with an unknown force, many people could only shiver in fear and hide in their homes, blocking the doors tightly. After a quarter of an hour, the murderous cries gradually subsided, but the smell of blood in the air became stronger. At this moment, excited shouts spread throughout the streets and alleys. The enemy bandits have been beheaded. Those who surrender will not be killed. The enemy bandits have been beheaded. Those who surrender will not be killed. The enemy bandits have been beheaded. Those who surrender will not be killed. The high-pitched voices were like a relay, passing through the mouths of the troops and spreading throughout the entire Xiangyang district. Meng Hun, who was already in a killing frenzy, heard this, and pulled out his sword from the heart of a corpse. Not only him, but most of the troops had already lost track of time. This exciting news reached their ears and pulled them back to their senses. After calming down, many of them realized that their arms were already sore and powerless. Their muscles were swollen, causing their skin to ache. Some of the troops panted heavily, feeling carefree as if they had escaped death. Some of them even sat on the ground in exhaustion, not caring how much blood there was on the ground. Most of them were injured and wounded, but compared to death, these minor injuries were nothing. At this moment, there were only a few members of the Tsing army who were still standing. Most of them were either dead or seriously injured, struggling at death's door. As for those who were still on their way, upon hearing that General Jiao had been beheaded, they were at a loss at first. Then they threw down their weapons and ran away. Of course, there were still more than 1,000 people who were captured in the end. These people were the spoils of war. Meng Hun composed himself and said to the troops beside him, "Clean up the battlefield, bandage the injured brothers' wounds. As for the brothers who died in battle, remember to collect their corpses, so that they can be buried in peace in the future." These troops were not only Jiang Pingji's private troops, but also the children that Meng Hun had raised. He had spent years of painstaking effort on the troops. Losing one person made him feel as if a knife was twisting his heart. But as a general, He understood that it was an honor to be born a general and die on the battlefield. Meng Hun waved his sword expressionlessly, flung the blood on the blade to the ground, then sheathed it. He needed to meet up with Lang Jun as soon as possible to stabilize the situation, lest the remnants of the Tsing-Yi army counterattack. At this moment, more than 50 troops led by Jiang Pingji had already occupied the district headquarters, guarding the entrance and all the important crossings. When everyone saw Meng Hun and his men coming, they all saluted. Meng Hun asked, "Is Lang Jun all right?" The two guards said with admiration, "Lang Jun is fine, he is waiting for you in the hall." Meng Hun nodded, took a deep breath, and stepped into the gate. The district headquarters was still as bright as day, the candles had not burned out, and the cold, bloodied corpses were still lying on the ground, no one collecting them. He did not look at them, directly walked over the broken bodies, and went straight ahead. Jiang Pingji sat in the seat of honor. General Jiao's head was placed on one side, his eyes were still open, and he died with a grievance. The room was full of blood, with the luxurious decorations and the unfinished food and wine on the dining table, which seemed out of place. The audience in the streaming room kept wanting to talk to Jiang Pingji, and the bullet screen was flooded, but she was still indifferent. Since the situation in the district headquarters was stabilized, she sat in the seat of honor, as if she was waiting for someone. Meng Hun strode to Jiang Pingji and suddenly knelt down in front of her, his voice like thunder. Chapter 413. Chu, your subject Chu Xiu pays respect to the Lord. Lao Ciji Lianmeng, your subject Wan Jixin pays respect to the Lord. Kojiao Qi Fan, your subject Lu Fangfang pays respect to the Lord. Feather Dang Dio Kingshan, your subject Mo Mao Mao pays respect to the Lord. When Meng Hun knelt before Jiang Pingji and addressed her as his lord, the streaming room went wild. Countless viewers agreed with him. They all knew that it was a room for harem fights. The streamer had said that she refused to fight in the harem and was determined to rule the throne. But a few years had passed and she had not done anything. Many viewers even thought that Jiang Pingji was just boasting. Meng Hun's actions were undoubtedly a sign. From that night onwards, their streamer was ready to ascend to the heavens. Jiang Pingji's lips curled into a smile. Her cold face became a little warmer. She helped Meng Hun up and said, "You've worked hard tonight." Meng Hun stood up and couldn't help but grin, revealing a set of snow-white teeth. "That's not right, my lord. If we were to talk about who contributed the most in this siege, it would be my lord. I don't dare to take it all for myself." Meng Hun felt that night was the most carefree since he had rebelled against the Mengs. He felt like he had come back to life and his blood was boiling. Even though he was covered in blood and there was a lingering stench at the tip of his nose, he felt extremely comfortable from head to toe. If it was someone else, they might think that Meng Hun was just flattering her. But Jiang Pingji knew that he admired her from the bottom of his heart. The smile on his lips deepened, and his eyes were filled with warmth. No one can take away the credit that belongs to you. The head was to be hung on the city wall. Wen Zheng and the rest will understand when they see it. As she said that, she lifted her leg and kicked General Jiao's head. The head rolled down like a rubber ball. Meng Hun nodded and said, "I'll do it now. How many prisoners of the Tsing-Yi army do we have?" Jiang Pingji stopped Meng Hun and said, "I don't know how many troops were killed in this attack. Including the 1,000 imperial guards under Coach Luo Yue, there are at most 2,000. The Tsing-Yi army can't even defend the city with 10,000 men, let alone the few of us. If there are members of the Tsing-Yi army who are willing to surrender, we can consider incorporating them into the army for the time being. Stabilizing the situation is the most important." Meng Hun looked a little embarrassed. He felt that the number of captives this time was probably less than 2,000. There were more than 10,000 members of the Tsing-Yi army. 3,000 of them were lured out of the city during the day and all of them were annihilated on the Longhu boardwalk. Jiang Pingji led more than 50 troops and killed close to 500 members of the Tsing-Yi army. He divided his troops and led other troops to ambush the Tsing-Yi army near the West Gate. He estimated that 3,000 of them were annihilated. After General Jiao was beheaded, Another group was scared away. Based on this calculation, the remaining members of the Tsing army who were captured did not exceed 2,000. Seeing his expression, Jiang Pingji's heart skipped a beat. She said, "It's just a temporary incorporation to keep up appearances." Meng Han said, "Putting up a front?" "Yes, although Xiangyang district has been conquered, it's hard to guarantee that there won't be a second group of Tsing army coming to cause trouble. We need manpower now. When the situation in Xiangyang district stabilizes, I plan to recruit soldiers again. The selection criteria will be stricter. The quality of the soldiers is more important than the quantity. If I want to nurture, I will nurture elite soldiers." Meng Han understood what Jiang Pingji meant and felt relieved. "Then how does my lord plan to deal with the corpses of the bandits?" After experiencing the earthquake in Shangjing, Meng Han had some taboos about corpses. He was afraid that if the corpses decomposed, they would cause an epidemic or pollute the water source. Jiang Pengji replied without raising her brows, "Directly transport them outside the city and burn them. Special times call for special treatment. We don't have enough manpower. After taking over Xiangyang district, there are still many things to do. How can we have extra manpower to bury them? Now that the weather is hot, the corpses will rot easily if left for a long time. It's better to deal with them as soon as possible. Remember to transport them to a remote place and deal with them." Meng Han did not have much objection to burning them. After all, they were the corpses of his enemies. "Oh yes, get someone to get you some water and treat the wounds on your body. Otherwise, when the wounds fester, you'll suffer for nothing." Jiang Pingji was skilled. Although she looked disheveled and was covered in blood, the blood belonged to others. Meng Han belonged to the category of a normal person. Moreover, it was a chaotic battle in the middle of the night. He was ferocious and fearless and fought bravely. His arms, shoulder blades, lower back and other places had additional wounds. If they were not treated properly, when the wounds fester or become infected, it would be troublesome. After Meng Han heard this, his heart warmed. He said, "Thank you for your concern, my lord." Meng Han carried General Jiu's head and walked to the door. He summoned a troop and asked him to hang the head on the west city gate. "Send 100 more people to guard the district headquarters and protect my lord's safety. Everyone must be alert tonight. Don't be careless." Although half of the Tsing army in Xiangyang district had been destroyed, the possibility of them making a comeback could not be ruled out. On the other side, Jiang Pingji's tense nerves relaxed. She had no intention of resting. It was destined to be a sleepless night. She did not deal with her image. Instead, she attracted someone. "Where are all the women in the hall?" The troop blushed and said, "Leng Jun, do you want to see them?" Jiang Pingji raised her brows and said, "Call me lord." The troop quickly changed his address and asked again, "Do you want to see them?" Jiang Pingji nodded. When she rushed in, she not only noticed General Jiu and the others, but also noticed more than 20 disheveled women in the hall. At that time, the situation was too chaotic. Jiang Pingji did not care about their safety. Now that they had settled down, she should arrange a place for them to go. The troops were a group of men. Even if they had strict discipline above their heads, it was hard to guarantee that no one would be tempted by them. After all, most of the troops were bandits. Jiang Pingji knew very well what bandits were like. Not long after, the women who were locked up in the small woodshed in the side hall were brought over. Every one of them was covered in dust. Some of them were silent, some were trembling, and some were expressionless, like walking puppets. Jiang Pingji sat upright in the seat of honor. The women recognized her. Thinking of her ruthlessness when she killed people, they became more and more timid. "My lord, I have brought them here." Jiang Pingji glanced at all the women and then shifted her gaze to the troop. She asked in a flat tone, "Did you bully them?" The troop's face turned pale and he said in a low voice, "We didn't bully them. It's just that when we pushed and shoved, we inevitably touched them a little." The internal discipline of the troops was strict. Whoever dared to violate it would have severe consequences. They still had a sense of propriety. However, all adult men had some physiological needs. Jiang Pingji was not unreasonable. She did not expect these people to be monks who cultivated in seclusion and had few desires. In order to solve this conflict, she informed Meng Hun that each troop could take a day off every month. They were free to allocate the day's time. As long as they did not kill, fight, or violate the disciplinary rules, she did not care about anything else. Of course, if they violated the rules she set, the consequences would be absolutely miserable. You are quite honest. You can leave. Search the district headquarters and see if there are any thicker clothes. Bring them to them. The young man hurriedly left as if he had been pardoned. After he went out, he secretly raised his hand to wipe his forehead and let out a long sigh of relief. Chapter 4:14. Now, only Jiang Pingji and the pitiful women were left in the hall. The first thing she said was, "I'm not interested in you. You don't have to be so scared." Regardless of the women's reactions, the audience in the streaming room was about to kneel down before her. Streamer, are you comforting them or scaring them? Labor income tax. I think it's a threat. Lao Cg Lianmeng. There's nothing wrong with what the streamer said. She's a woman. Of course, she's not interested in women. The audience in the streaming room knew that Jiang Pingji was a woman who was more manly than men. However, the women who were hurt did not know that. Which family are you from? I'll send someone to escort you home tomorrow morning. Even after she said that, the women below still did not move. They just lowered their heads quietly. Some of them were still trembling. Jiang Pingji frowned. If you refuse to speak, I'll tacitly agree that you want to stay. You also know what will happen to a beautiful woman if she stays with a group of men. Do you still want to remain silent and refuse to return to your loved ones? At that moment, a young girl who was about 15 or 16 knelt down with a thud. She said with red eyes, sobbing, "I'm the daughter of a wealthy merchant. Those beasts killed my whole family. Now I'm the only one left. How do you expect me to return? I'll never agree to stay and let them trample on me. I only ask that you take pity on me and give me a quick death." When there was a first, there would naturally be a second. Then, another woman knelt down to plead. Slowly, all of them knelt on the ground. Compared to General Jiao's ferocious and scary appearance, Jiang Pingji was slender and harmless. Even if she was covered in blood, she was more likable than General Jiao. Jiang Pingji rubbed her brows and asked in a dull tone, "If you really want to die, why are you still alive?" As soon as she said that, everyone's expression changed drastically. The remaining color on their faces faded. How could Jiang Pingji not know what they were thinking? They suspected that she was lying and thought that she did not want to let them go. Her good intentions were twisted and misunderstood by others. She was also depressed. "I don't have any ill intentions when I say that." Jiang Pingji spread her hands and said, "Since I said I will send someone to send you home, I will definitely do it. The Tsing-Yi army is a mob. They have committed numerous crimes and view human lives as insignificant as ants. However, I am the district magistrate of Xiangyang district personally appointed by the emperor. In the territory of Xiangyang district, you are all citizens under my rule. Why would I hurt you? Alas, if you really don't have a place to go, I'll think of a way to settle you all down. Don't worry, I won't let anyone bully you." As soon as she finished speaking, the expressions of these women became very interesting. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the teenager who killed people like flies was the newly appointed district magistrate of Xiangyang district. The first girl stammered, You are really the county magistrate? Do I need to show you the emperor's decree?" Jiang Pingji asked. The other party shook his head like a rattledrum. His face gradually lost its color, and he looked a little embarrassed. If Jiang Pingji was really the district magistrate, she would definitely not force them. In other words, she really wanted to help them. However, they really had no place to go. Jiang Pingji sighed. "Stay in the district headquarters for the time being. I'll arrange everything properly, then I'll think of a way to settle you all down. As for the property confiscated by the Tsing-Yi army, if it's true, I'll return it all to you after tidying it up. The crowd said in unison, "Thank you, District Magistrate." Hualyan Supermarket? Streamer, do you really plan to return their property to them? You must be very short of money and food now, right? Jiang Pingji secretly rolled her eyes. Was she such an insatiable person in the eyes of the audience? Streamer V, what I lack now is manpower, not food. She, Jiang Pingji, had not fallen to the point where she needed to snatch the property of an orphan girl. The women were still anxious, but Jiang Pingji's attitude gave them confidence. At that moment, on the two sides of the Longhu boardwalk, Qiguan Rang did not sleep the whole night. He held the feather fan that never left his side and looked into the distance worriedly. It seems that I overestimated the motley crew. He thought that the Tsing-Yi army would launch a sneak attack in the middle of the night. Who knew that there was not even a shadow of the enemy after the second half of the night? Feng Jin covered his face with his sleeves and yawned. If there's still no movement after daybreak, that's good news. Luo Yu looked at Qiguan Rang on his left and Feng Jin on his right. Then he looked at Su Ku, who was frowning so tightly that he could squeeze a mosquito to death. His heart skipped a beat. Keeping watch at night was not the job of a scholar. It was only the second half of the night, but the three of them could not hold on any longer. Luo Yu humbly consulted Feng Jin. Master Huayu, I don't understand what you're saying. Feng Jin said, if there's an enemy attack in the second half of the night, it means that Lang Jun is in trouble. Not only did the Tsing-Yi army hold Lang Jun back, but they also have extra troops to attack the camp at night. On the contrary, if there's still no movement at dawn, Lang Jun is most likely successful. Qiguan Rang waved the feather fan with one hand and fiddled with the bonfire with the other. He said, send someone to the west gate to check on the situation. Luo Yu asked, what situation? Check to see if there are heads hanging on the city walls. If it's a stranger's head, Lang Jun will have succeeded. Fitong. Qiguan Rang stopped talking. If that's the case, we have to think of a way out for these people and make proper arrangements for them. Luo Yu's face darkened. He said, I'll do it now. Seeing Luo Yu walk away, Qiguan Rang asked Su Ku, what do you think about the possibility of Lang Jun succeeding this time? Su Ku asked in reply, how can Wenjing not know about the troops' combat power? The 1,000 troops were all equipped with improved crossbows and handy weapons. This was the project that cost the most among the troops. How could there be no return after spending so much money? If they couldn't even handle 10,000 Tsing-Yi army soldiers, then what was there to do? The smile on Qiguan Rang's face became more sincere. He said, knowing is one thing, but the battlefield is ever-changing. Who can predict everything? The three of them looked at the bonfire with different thoughts. The night was destined to be difficult. No one was in the mood to sleep. A ray of golden light rose from the east. It burned the morning fog and dispersed the gloomy night sky. Qiguan Rang rubbed his sore eyes and used his tongue to lick his dry lips. He looked calm on the surface, but his heart was already beating like thunder. He stood up straight and looked at the huge city in the distance that was covered by the morning fog. He prayed in his heart. Report! A loud shout broke the silence. The three of them clenched their fists. Chapter 415. Success? At this moment, these two words appeared in the minds of the three of them. The emotions in their hearts were agitated and difficult to calm down. Feng Jin and Qiguan Rang's performance was considered calm and restrained. They did not have too obvious expressions. Su Ku stood up excitedly. His voice trembled slightly because of his agitation. Are you sure that the head on the city gate belongs to the bandit leader of the Tsing-Yi army? The Imperial Guard who reported the news cupped his fist and said, I specially disguised myself as an ordinary citizen and went to the west city gate of Xiangyang district to investigate. I found that the city gate was already open. The guards on the city gate were not from the Tsing-Yi army but the personal guards of District Magistrate Lu. I was afraid that it was a trap. I wandered around and asked the citizens entering and exiting the city. The head is indeed the bandit leaders. Upon hearing the news, Su Ku heaved a long sigh of relief. The exhaustion from worrying for a whole night came over him. His vision suddenly darkened. He staggered backward involuntarily and almost lost his footing. Fortunately, Qiguan Rang was by his side. He extended his hand and supported him. Only then did he avoid the miserable state of being intimately in contact with the ground. Feng Jin said to Luo Yu, who specially rushed over, "Chief Luo, please give the order to break camp. Lang Jun has just taken over Xiangyang district. I'm afraid the manpower at hand won't be able to control the situation. To prevent the remnants of the Tsing-Yi army from escaping and calling for reinforcements, Chief Luo, please quickly bring people to support." Luo Yu said, "This is what I should do. Master Huayu, you don't have to do this." Knowing that Jiang Pingji had successfully taken over Xiangyang district, the citizens who followed were emotional. Many of them put their palms together and sincerely thanked the gods. Taking over Xiangyang district meant that they would soon have a place to settle down. Perhaps they could take root here from then on. Along the way, Jiang Pingji did not let the people suffer much. However, compared to a wandering life, they preferred a stable and comfortable environment. Packing their luggage, the people followed the imperial guards and slowly approached Xiangyang district. Feng Jin slightly tidied up his appearance to make himself look clean and refreshed. Then he climbed into the horse carriage where Wei Jingxian was resting after giving birth. Among the people, Wei Jingxian and her daughter probably had the best days. "I'll lean against and rest for a while." There was only his wife and daughter in the carriage. Feng Jin was really exhausted. He leaned against the carriage lazily. He bent one knee and curled the other to reduce the space he occupied. His eyelids were so heavy as if they were filled with lead. Su Ku and Qiguan Rang narrowed their eyes slightly. Su Ku and Qiguan Rang could only force themselves to stay awake and ride. There would be no harm without comparison. Under the careful care of the maidservants, Wei Jingxian's confinement was not bad, and her body was recovering well. She leaned against the table in high spirits and sat up. "Are we going to enter the city?" Before she fell asleep last night, she vaguely heard news that Jiang Pingji was going to bring people to attack Xiangyang district at night. If Jiang Pingji failed, her husband would not have such a relieved expression. The only possibility was that Jiang Pingji had won. She had led her men to conquer Xiangyang district. Wei Jingxian was smart and quick-witted. She didn't purposely ask for information and deduced the information she wanted from the details. Feng Jin narrowed his eyes and nodded slightly. His breathing gradually stabilized. Wei Jingxian saw that his body was shaking along with the jolting of the carriage, so he could not sleep well. Her heart softened. She quietly put Changxing, who was sleeping soundly, on the bed, then stretched out her hand to support Feng Jin's pillow. Feng Jin sensed movement and opened his eyes halfway. Seeing that it was his wife, he closed his eyes again and rubbed his head. He found a comfortable position and fell into a deep sleep not long after. The carriage was specially made by the Lu residents. The shock absorption system was very good. Sleeping in the carriage did not feel much jolting. Qiguan Rang rode on the horse. He looked left and right but did not see Feng Jin. He felt depressed and kept fanning himself. He has a lovely wife and daughter. Rang also has one, but the treatment is so different. Feng Jin sneakily went to sleep. He had to keep his heavy eyelids open and resist sleepiness. Thinking about it made him feel bitter. Su Ku turned his head and looked at the stable carriage behind him. He said bitterly, "I also have a wife at home." However, wasn't he the same as Qiguan Rang? He was not a single dog, but he was better than a single dog. The two men looked at each other and sighed. Then they looked away tacitly. At such a time, they were still showing off their affection. They felt that they had suffered a great deal of damage. Because they were carrying nearly 20,000 people in Shangjing, the whole procession naturally moved at a slow pace. When the sun rose high in the sky, they saw the Xiangyang district lying dormant on the horizon. Seeing the city, the two of them had the same feeling in their hearts. The wind and clouds of this life would rise from here. Jia. On the other side, Jiang Pingji looked at the sun and estimated that it was almost time. Thus, she asked someone to fetch a bucket of water to wash away the blood stains on her body. She changed into a clean set of clothes. If it was not for the lingering smell of blood around her, no matter who saw her, they would praise her as a handsome young man. Let's go and welcome Xiaoyu and the rest outside the city. I estimated the time. They should be here soon. Jiang Pengji said cheerfully to Meng Hun, who had been busy all night and had dark circles under his eyes. When they arrive, there will be people to share the burden. Meng Hun was originally dispirited, but when he heard the second half of the sentence, he immediately perked up and subconsciously straightened his back. She waited for a quarter of an hour outside the West City with about 20 troops. Qiguan Rang and Su Ku's figures appeared in her sight. Both of them looked tired. They probably hadn't slept the whole night. Seeing this, a faint smile appeared on her face. Her eyes flickered and she couldn't help but feel excited. She urged her horse forward. "You're finally here." Qiguan Rang and Su Ku pulled the reins tightly, dismounted and bowed to her. "My lord." Jiang Pengji helped them up and smiled. "No need to be so courteous. It's been hard on you. You're tired from the journey. Go into the city and rest for a while." Qiguan Rang looked serious. "Rang, it's no big deal. It's just a little hard work, not worth mentioning. My lord has just taken over the Xiangyang district. The people's hearts are still unsettled. There are still many unresolved matters. To prevent any accidents, it's better to stabilize the situation and make arrangements for the people who follow my lord." Su Ku thought so too. Although he was really sleepy now, business was more important. The viewers in the streaming room who watched the whole process were delighted. The two strategists had walked the longest path. It was definitely their lord's trick. There were even some viewers who condemned her righteously. Chu, #laughter cry. Streamer, doesn't your conscience hurt by squeezing two trembling subordinates? Feather Dang Diao Qingtun. The streamer replied with a cold face. Of course it doesn't hurt. Squeezing employees is the basic skill of every boss. Go to the toilet with finger. Tisk. I've been following the streamer's streaming room for 3 to 4 years. I've never seen her have that kind of thing. Jiang Pengji ignored the bullet screen. Of course her conscience wouldn't hurt. Where's Huayu? She glanced around and didn't see Feng Jin. Qiguan Rang pointed at the carriage behind him with his feather fan. Jiang Pengji glanced at the carriage and sighed with emotion. It's good to have a wife who loves me. The two married men in front of her felt their knees hurt. My lord, your words hurt. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.